Chapter 11:12. The few of them agreed obediently. All right, I've roughly told you about the situation in the academy. You'll have to go and take a look yourself to truly understand the rest. This old man won't waste any more time here. Elder Wincy clapped his hands. Xiao Yi, help me send these children over first. I have something to do. Elder Xiao Yi, who was suddenly pulled over to be a laborer, was confused. What's the matter? Why are you in such a hurry? Elder Wincy coughed. I'll go and urge them to let the next person on duty go to Fangzhou earlier. Didn't you just come back? Huafeng should be watching over there right now. Why are you in such a hurry? Elder Qiao, he found it even more strange. Generally speaking, every elder would be in charge of guarding outside for a day. Every time it was a certain time, the elder in charge of taking over would go a little earlier. However, it was rare for the previous one to call for the next one to go up as soon as he returned. Elder Wincy wanted to say something, but hesitated. He couldn't say that they felt that the scourge had returned. If he said that, no one would go. It was better to hide it as long as possible. It's nothing. You know Huafeng's old habit. He likes to drink when he has nothing to do. I'm afraid that he'll secretly drink again when he's alone. It's fine if he gets drunk, but it won't be good if he delays other things. Only then did Elder Qiao nod. That's true. I've told him about this habit so many times, but he hasn't changed. Sigh, isn't it all because he was forced to quit drinking in the past? Now that he has the opportunity, he can finally drink to his heart's content. Elder Wincy's voice Chapter 11:13. Xiao Yi's expression quickly changed Elder Xiao. Speaking of Huafeng quitting drinking, who's he? It was all thanks to a certain looked at the two people even the dean couldn't get him to quit, in a seemingly casual manner did it. After the three figures the method was a little cruel, the process was a little bumpy. You guys seem to be close, and Huafeng was a little we're not very close. As a result, we just met in he became even worse now. Zhuisheng chuckled and said the two of them looked at each other. That kid is very talented. He seemed to have thought of something. He's only 16 years old. But he's already in 8th grade. I'll help you take care of these children. Go find someone to help. Luo Yinlin raised Elder his eyebrows, turned around, and quickly disappeared from flashed across his eyes. His strength was obviously not weaker than Elder Qiao. Zhuo Yisheng and the others were new. Let's go to the warriors, so they might be a little shocked. Elder Qiao curious when he encountered such a situation. Elder Qiao, however, he had been in the academy for a few years, and was used to seeing top geniuses from all over the world. Chu Luiyue, although Chu Yu was not bad, team. It was not. She listened to Elder Qiao. He talked about the academy with the others. If he can develop well, she kept looking around her. She didn't know if it was an illusion, a fair evaluation, but she felt as if she had been here before. Luo, coupled with the scene that had appeared in her mind earlier, Luo Yinlin, she was even more certain of her guess. He saw Luo unfortunately looking at the figure. Most of her memories were serious expression. Apart from that, I've seen many talented celestial. She couldn't remember anything, but most of them are very arrogant. He could only suppress his thoughts for the time being. He was humble after flying in for a while, and it became much. Why are there 3 junior brothers? Students, if they had not seen someone cultivating on Elder Qiao, he heard they would not have believed down. They could also see some teachers. You guys are Chung was 20 among these 4 little scene in front of prosperity. He was like a child. Such a calm temper felt whether it was innate or nurture. Everyone looked at Luo Yinming. It would indeed Yinlin rubbed his chin. Then the remaining two keep hiding it. We'll know at the beginning. Luo Yinlin. She was doing celestial position, familiarize that easy. The warriors territory wave at the two of them. Elder Qiao. All right, Elder Qiao. Let's not bother about Luo Yinlin nodded. I'll bring you guys to familiarize yourself. Sure. Many people below. I'll check on Yinming later. The two of them obediently walked. You've already reached Elder Qiao after not seeing each other for a long time. Could it be that the ones they following behind him? Luo sure. Finally, Shin Master's next. 1, Elder Qiao. 3, 4. Ever since her 4th brother came, I think there's a junior sister. You go first. Some people could not. She was a little tempted. On my account, one had to know that the proportion of female cultivators was what about high on. At this moment, Luo sure. Every time a junior sister hearing this voice, you could do many students who Luo Yinlin glanced at his sister. A tall figure walked out with Luo Yinlin. It was a handsome, the two away your thoughts. His eyes were clear. Chu Luiyue, as was said, turn around and narrowed his eyes. Heard the faint cheers. It was because the person who spoke, Elder Qiao, also seemed to have sensed something. Luo Yinlin. Chu, what? Brother, I heard that those celestial physician. The young man was shaken up. Don't be a coward. His thin lips blinked, slight chuckle in the corners of his mouth. Okay, but did not Elder Qiao. He suddenly turned straight up. Just surprised. Straight for I didn't expect the academy. Stopped her back and retracted her smile. Elder Qiao thinking. Elder Qiao nodded, chuckled. Satisfaction. Greetings, blindly Qiao. She's actually Luo Yinlin. He was relieved. Blindly trying to be brave. When Elder Qiao saw him, He also
Those who were able
laughed
to
out
enter
loud.
Lingxiao College
I just finished
are all the
studying
most
a Xian
outstanding
formation
geniuses
and came to
in the
spar with
Divine
them.
Ruins world.
As Luo Yinlin
There's no
spoke,
way they
his
wouldn't
gaze
understand
landed
this
on
principle.
Luo Shi.
The most
and the
important
others.
thing is to
His
learn
handsome
from each other
face
and
immediately
improve our own
became
cultivation.
gentler.
Apart from the
Also,
academy,
I'm here to pick
they
up
were
my younger
well aware
siblings.
that there were even
Oh,
more experts
when Elder
outside.
Qiao heard that,
Only by making
he turned
himself
around to take a
stronger
look.
would he
It
not
was only
waste
then
a
that he
single
realized
minute
something.
and a single second
Fourth
here.
brother,
Chu
Luo
Luo
sighed
sure
softly.
and the others
You're
could
right.
not hide
The principal
their
and
excitement
elders of the
shouted in
academy
unison.
must have
Zhuo
contributed
Sheng was
greatly
cousins with them.
to creating
They grew up
such an
together
environment and had a good
open
relationship.
competition and
Therefore,
mutual tolerance.
she also called
When she
him
first
fourth
came
brother.
here, she
Luo
actually had a
Yinlin
lot of
smiled
other
deeply.
thoughts.
Not
But
bad.
now,
You guys
she
came
suddenly
faster
had
than
some
I expected.
expectations and
It seems that
yearnings for
Shi
Lingxiao
has
College.
broken through in advance.
Those over there are
Our
all
father and
master
mother.
students.
Luo
Elder
Shi
Xiao
blushed
suddenly stopped
slightly.
and pointed
They're
below.
doing well.
Chu
They just
Luo
missed fourth
followed his
brother.
line of sight.
The people
and
who were
looked
watching
over
from below
on the
sighed.
flat,
So she
and
was really
wide ground
Luo
halfway up the
Yinlin's
mountain.
younger sister.
There were more than
And
20
she was his
students
biological
standing there.
sister.
There were both
And there was no
males
hope
and
for them.
females.
There
but
were
they
not
all
many
quite
people in the
young.
academy.
All of
who
them
were
seemed
Luo
to be
Yinlin's
full of
match.
youthful energy.
If they wanted his
Standing
sister,
at the front of
they
them
must be
was a
tired
woman
of living
in her 30s.
Sigh.
She had a graceful figure and a gentle face. However, the faint pressure coming from her made one not dare to underestimate her. Even taking a few more glances at her seemed to be blasphemy. There was a huge and complicated Xian formation beside her. From the looks of it, she seemed to be in class. When she heard the commotion, she raised her head slightly and looked over. Elder Qiao, he laughed. Qinyang, I brought you a good seedling today. Miao Qinyang pursed her lips and smiled. It's clearly Wincy's credit. Why are you here? Judging from her tone, she seemed to be of the same seniority as these elders. Elder Qiao, he snorted. I knew I couldn't hide it from you. You already knew when they passed through the barrier, right? Miao Qinyang smiled and did not deny it. She was indeed in charge of guarding part of Lingxiao College's barrier. Therefore, she was aware of some of the things that happened. She looked at Luo Yinming gently. You're Yinlin's younger brother, right? I've heard him mention you before. You're indeed not bad. Luo Yinming hurriedly said. Greetings, elder. I'm Luo Yinming. You could just call me Qinyang. Calling me elder makes me sound old for no reason. Miao Qinyang sighed coquettishly. Luo Yinming did not dare to do so. Miao Qinyang did not tease him. Instead, it was the other students who started shouting. Qinyang doesn't like people calling her elder. Newcomer, please remember it in the future. He called her that just now, but Qinyang didn't get angry. Is it because of Yinlin? That goes without saying. Haha, Yinlin is Qinyang's favorite disciple. Now that there's another one, why would she be angry? Luo Yinming was speechless when she saw how the crowd was cheering. She did not expect there to be such an elder in the world. Qinyang glanced at the crowd with a half-smile. Don't scare him. Have you figured out the Xian formation yet? Are you here to join the fun? The crowd quickly retracted their gazes and continued studying the Xian formation. Miao Qinyang's beautiful eyes turned to Chu Luiyue. This child is not bad. She raised her eyebrows slightly and revealed a meaningful smile. She could not see through the young man's strength. It was obvious that the Yuan instrument he had with him was very powerful. The Luo family was one of the top families in the world of God, but Luo Yinming did not have such an item. This young man, Qinyang, this is not for you. This young man is a celestial physician. Elder Qiao, he hurriedly explained. Miao Qinyang looked regretful. That's a pity. I feel like I have an affinity with this child. That was the truth. The young man's black and white eyes were clear and clear like spring water. It was pleasing to look at. Vaguely, there was a sense of familiarity between his eyebrows. Elder Qiao, Yi's mouth twitched. All right. Since I brought him here, I won't stay any longer. After that, he left with Chu Luiyue. Not long after, Chu Luiyue smelled a strong medicinal fragrance coming from the mountain. Her eyes lit up. Someone was forming a pill. Chapter 11:14. Soon, she realized that it was not just one person who was refining the pill, but two. On a short mountain peak, two youths were facing each other. There was a cauldron in front of each of them. Flames were rising from the cauldrons, and one could vaguely see a pill the size of a longan fruit. The rich medicinal fragrance came from this cauldron. There was a stone platform beside each of them.
There were several black jade tokens on one stone platform, while there was only one on the other stone platform. This seemed to be a competition. There were a few people standing around the two youths, as if they were watching the competition. As for the black jade token on the stone platform, it should belong to them. Chu Liwei took a closer look. The two youths looked to be around 23 or 24 years old. The one on the left was tall and skinny. He wore a blue robe and had a decent appearance. His eyes were fixed on the pill that was about to be completed in the cauldron. His originally fair face was slightly flushed, and fine sweat appeared on his forehead. It was obvious that he was at the end of his rope. On the other hand, the person opposite him wore a black brocade robe and had deep facial features. Compared to his opponent, his expression was much more relaxed. The outcome of this battle was clear at a glance. Looks like Tuoba Xian is going to win again. Elder Xiao, he seemed to be used to this scene. He stroked his beard and said, "If he wins this round, he will have won 5 rounds in a row." Chu Liwei followed his gaze and realized that he was staring at the youth with deep facial features. Most of the black jade tokens were indeed placed on the stone platform beside him. Clearly, everyone believed that he would win. On the other hand, the blue-robed youth only had one black jade token on the stone platform. That should be his. Elder Xiao, he sensed her gaze and saw the curiosity in her eyes. He chuckled and explained, "That's right. They are betting on pills." "Betting on pills?" Chu Liwei was stunned for a moment. "That's right. There are many celestial physician students in the academy. They are not convinced of each other's strength, so they often bet on pills. The two participants will choose the time and place to compete. Whoever could refine a higher grade pill with better medicinal effects would be considered the winner. However, what was different from a normal competition was that before the competition, they had to place their bets. Anything was fine with this bet. As for the spectators, they also have to place bets before the competition starts." Chu Liwei narrowed his eyes. "Other than that, if I win the bet, there should be other rewards, right?" A simple bet wasn't enough to make these geniuses scramble like ducks. It was fine if it happened once in a while, but if it happened often, it was really unnecessary. If he had the time, he might as well use it to research pill recipes. Since so many people were so enthusiastic about it, there must be some other reason. Elder Xiao, he looked at her with admiration. "You're smart. These bets were actually not the main point. The main point was that winning or losing this pill bet would affect their points in the academy. Points? In the academy, most things require different amounts of points to exchange for. In other words, points were the hard currency of the academy, which was also money. They can be used to exchange for herbs, books, or anything else you want. When it comes to pill bets, other than the usual bets, they would often bet their points too. With this method, they can accumulate points in extremely fast speed. Of course, if they lose, they will lose everything." Chu Liwei nodded in understanding and looked at the black jade tokens placed on the two stone platforms. "The spectators will also bet their points?" "That's right. There will be more and less, and the winning rate will be different. They have already communicated with each other beforehand. As long as it was a normal pill bet and nothing happened, the elders of the academy would support it. Under normal circumstances, they wouldn't interfere." Elder Xiao, he looked at her and chuckled. "Why? Do you want to bet too? You just entered the academy today, so you should have 100 points. Chu Liwei curled her fingers. "I'm a newcomer, is that all right? What's wrong with that?" Elder Xiao, he waved his sleeves and flew down. Chu Liwei followed closely behind him. Sensing the presence of someone behind them, the few people who had been watching the battle attentively turned around to look. Elder Xiao Yi. Upon seeing the other party's face, they hurriedly bowed. Elder Xiao, he waved his hands and smiled. "There's no need to stand on ceremony. I brought you a new seedling who just entered the academy." The few of them turned to look at Chu Liwei behind him. Chu Liwei clasped her fist and bowed, paying respects to senior brothers. The few of them returned the greeting politely, but they still looked at Chu Liwei doubtfully. "May I know what rank this junior is at now?" Chu Liwei smiled. 8th rank. A hint of understanding flashed across their eyes, and there was a hint of contempt in their eyes. Elder Xiao, he knew these people very well, and he couldn't help but chuckle. A 16-year-old 8th
rank celestial physician. You should be quite popular here, right? The few students were taken aback, and they looked at Chu Luiwei in a completely different manner. Chu, you go. Whoever you think will win. Just put your own black jade token up there. Elder Qiao patted Chu Liuyue's shoulders energetically. After all, he was the one who brought the other party in, so he had to back him up. A god-tier cultivator slapped Chu Liuyue's shoulder, causing half of her shoulder to go numb. However, it was fortunate that she had cultivated under the guidance of Duga Mabao for a period of time, so her resistance to blows had increased significantly. At this moment, she was barely able to stabilize herself. Originally, they shouldn't have participated in the pill gambling at this point. However, since Elder Qiao had spoken, they couldn't refute him. Forget it. I'll just treat it as a greeting gift for the new junior. Chu Luiwei glanced at them and walked towards one of them. Then, he placed the black jade token on the platform. The black jade token on the platform turned from 1 to 2. Sigh. Elder Qiao raised his hand, wanting to stop him, but it was too late. You child, didn't Elder Qiao already say that Tuoba Xian would definitely win? Just by looking at the number of black jade tokens on both sides of the platform, it was obvious who had a higher chance of winning. Elder Qiao was exasperated at Tuoba Xian's failure to live up to his expectations. When the few people beside him saw this, they looked at each other, and mockery flashed across their eyes. A 16-year-old 8th rank celestial physician. It sounded quite impressive, but it didn't seem like he had any real skills. They were already at the last step of pill formation. How could he make the wrong choice? Chu Luiwei didn't seem to notice this. After putting down the black jade token, he walked back with a calm expression. Elder Qiao lowered his voice. Chu Yu, what are you doing? You only have 100 points. After this round, all of them will be deducted. Chu Luiwei blinked. Isn't pill gambling supposed to be a gamble? Digression. You take a gamble and turn a bicycle into a motorcycle. Chapter 11:15. Elder Qiao shook his head inwardly. To think that he thought that this child was obedient and steady. Who knew that he would be so daring? Even if he wanted to bet, he had to win. How could he bet on losing? Great, he had just arrived at the academy and was about to lose everything. Don't do this again in the future. You don't know how hard it is to earn points. Elder Qiao said earnestly. Chu Luiwei nodded seriously. However, it was another matter whether they took his advice or not. At this moment, a buzzing sound could be heard. The surrounding people looked up and saw that the sound came from Tuoba Xian's cauldron. It's about to succeed, someone shouted in a low voice. The medicinal fragrance became stronger. Flames rose, and on the surface of the pill, lines and lines appeared one after another. Everyone could not help but hold their breaths. However, at this moment, a slight fluctuation suddenly came from the cauldron. Tuoba Xian's expression changed slightly. Then, without giving him any time to react, the pill suddenly exploded. Boom! There was a loud explosion. Tuoba Xian was the first to bear the brunt of the impact. He was immediately flung out by the terrifying force and fell heavily to the ground. However, he could not care about himself. He hurriedly got up and looked at his cauldron. The flames inside had been completely extinguished. The pill was also destroyed, leaving only a handful of ashes. A faint burnt smell filled the air. Tuoba Xian's face turned pale. How could? He had only made a small mistake just now. He thought that he had repaired it. Who knew that it was still? The sudden explosion also shocked the surrounding people. Almost at the same time, Zhong Sun had also reached the final stage. His face was red and his lips were pale. Sweat kept dripping from his forehead. It was obvious that he could not hold on any longer. However, his feet were still rooted to the ground. He used all his strength to inject his last bit of energy into the pill. Buzz! A fluctuation hit the cauldron. A rich medicinal fragrance exploded. Several vein patterns appeared on the medicinal pill one after another. Then, the pill suddenly rushed out. Zhong Sun hurriedly took out a jade box and put it inside. Crack! The jade box closed. That medicinal pill had been locked inside obediently. He stumbled and almost fell to the ground. After he steadied himself,
he was finally able to catch his breath. Looking at the crowd, his tired face was filled with undisguised joy. I won. Everyone fell silent. No one had expected that Tooba, who'd originally occupied the upper hand all along the way and had victory within his grasp, would actually fail at the final moment and lose to Zhong Sun. Even Elder Qiao, he was stunned for a moment. Congratulations. The person who spoke was Chu Luiwei. Zhong Sun looked at her and smiled. Thank you for supporting me earlier. Chu Luiwei blinked. Senior brother, I just wanted to take a risk. I should be the one thanking you. You won't blame me for sharing your points, right? Huh, how could this be? Zhong Sun laughed. He had won quite a bit in this comeback, so it was not a big deal to share some with this junior brother. Most importantly, this person was the only one who stood out to support him when he was at his weakest. He had to admit that he did not have much confidence in himself at that time. Only this junior brother of his helped him to calm his mind. That was more important than anything else. Zhong Sun walked to another stone platform. Tooba Xian had already stood up with a complicated expression. Everyone, I won't stand on ceremony with you for the previous bet and points. Zhong Sun said with a smile. Tooba Xian took a deep breath. If you're willing to bet, you must be willing to admit defeat. Take it. I'll get it back from you next time. Zhong Sun touched each of the black jade tokens with his own. Rays of light flashed. Chu Luiwei realized that the black jade tokens also had their own secrets. After Zhong Sun searched through all the black jade tokens, he walked back to her side and said with a smile, I'm sorry. Little junior brother, give it to me. Chu Luiwei handed her token over. With a flash of light, a few lines of small words appeared on her black jade token. Chu Luiwei quickly scanned it and realized that there were a few more things inside. There were herbs, prescriptions, and so on. There was a number at the bottom. 1,000. That should be her share of the points. Senior brother, my name is Zhong Sun. Zhong Sun smiled and returned the items to Chu Luiwei. You deserve all of this. Don't stand on ceremony. Chu Luiwei hesitated for a moment, but finally took it and smiled. Thank you, senior brother Zhong Sun. This black jade token indeed had the same effect as the universe ring. As if seeing through her thoughts, Zhong Sun explained a lot of things can be stored in the black jade token. As the points increase, the space will become larger. Moreover, as long as it enters your black jade token, it will be marked with your aura. Therefore, you don't have to worry about it being stolen or robbed. Chu Luiwei thought that this thing was indeed convenient. Just this point alone could dispel many people's crooked thoughts. The bets won from normal pill gambling or the items that you take the initiative to give away will also be recorded. It won't cause trouble. This made Chu Luiwei regard the black jade token in her hand even more highly. I didn't know that this thing was so formidable. Of course, the black jade token of every student in the academy is specially refined by the elder of the armament master. Elder Qiao, he added. As he spoke, he walked over and looked at Chu Luiwei with a surprised gaze. You're quite lucky. Even under such circumstances, you actually won the bet. Chu Luiwei smiled faintly. My luck has always been good, but this time, it's all thanks to you and senior brother Zhong Sun. Otherwise, I wouldn't have had this chance. Elder Qiao, he was pleased to hear that. All right, now that you're here, you should learn from them during this period of time. At the beginning of the month, you can take the examination and acknowledge them as your teacher. I still have something to do, so I'll take my leave first, Chu Luiwei replied. The other students also hurriedly sent him off. Elder Qiao Yi's figure quickly disappeared from everyone's sight. The surroundings quickly quietened down. What's your name? Tooba Xian's voice came from behind. Chu Luiwei turned around and smiled faintly. Chu Yu? Tooba Xian swallowed a mouthful of blood in his throat and looked at her suspiciously. Why did you bet on him winning just now? Chu Yu's expression didn't change. It's more interesting to win with a small bet. If he were to follow the trend, he would only be taking a mouthful of the other party's soup. Moreover, Zhong Sun was definitely going to win this round. Why did she have to make things difficult for herself? Tooba Xian's expression became more restrained as he thought to himself that he was thinking too much. She was just an 8th grade celestial physician.
She shouldn't be able to see anything. Perhaps it was really just a coincidence? Junior brother Chuyu, I'll bring you around. It'll be the beginning of the month in a few days. There's not much time left for you to prepare. Zhong Sun said. Chu Lu nodded. Thank you, senior brother Zhong Sun. Chapter 11:16. Elder Qiao Yi's previous worries were a little unnecessary. He never would have thought that although Chu Luiwei had no status or background, he relied on a pill bet to help her gain a foothold. At the very least, with a senior like Zhong Sun taking the initiative to help her, it could save her a lot of trouble. Although most celestial physicians were proud, they would have a good impression of those who chose to stand on their side in times of trouble. Zhong Sun brought Chu Luiwei around. After interacting for a period of time, he felt that this new junior brother was not bad. Although he was young, he was very sensible and polite. His appearance could only be considered delicate and clean, and he was not an eye-catching existence in the crowd. However, there seemed to be a natural noble aura in his bones. This rare aura made him stand out from the rest. At first, Zhong Sun felt that since the other party had supported him during the pill bet, he had to give him some face. But slowly, he had some thoughts of befriending him. This young man named Chuyu was indeed outstanding in all aspects. He should be the young master of some aristocratic family. Zhong Sun thought to himself, this kind of bearing was definitely not something an ordinary person could have. Even though Zhang Xian didn't say much about his background, seemingly intending to conceal it, there were quite a few students who did the same here as well, so it wasn't too surprising. Therefore, Zhong Sun did not care much. Chu Luiwei followed him to visit many places, but they did not meet many people on the way. It's almost the end of the month, and everyone is busy cultivating and preparing for the examination at the beginning of the month. Walking on a shady stone road, Zhong Sun explained. In addition to the new students taking the examination, the older students also have their own missions. You have to know that the competition here is very intense. Although Zhong Sun said this with a smile, it was not difficult to see his serious expression. Chu Lu nodded. The #1 academy in the Divine Ruins world gathered all the talents in the world. It would be strange if the competition was not intense. I just had a breakthrough a few days ago, so I wanted to find Tooba Xian to practice. Actually, he was not too confident. Who knew? It could only be said that no matter how strong you were, you had to treat every pill refinement with caution and go all out. Otherwise, there will be people waiting to pull you down at any time. That senior martial brother seems to be breaking through soon. Chu Luiwei said. Zhong Sun looked at her in surprise. How do you know? Chu Luiwei paused. This kind of thing was actually very easy to see. However, the prerequisite was that one's strength had to be greater than the other party's, or at least the same. Tooba Xian was a 9th grade celestial physician. He seemed to be trying to concoct a 9th grade pill, but he didn't succeed. Although Chu Luiwei had not fully recovered his strength, his eyesight was still there. However, these words could not be said. I guessed. Chu Luiwei said with a smile. Want to break through? I also like to find people to spar with. Zhong Sun saw her sincere expression and did not doubt her. There's another reason why he agreed to my invitation. If he can win 5 rounds in a row, his points will double. Tooba Xian was confident that he could win, so he agreed to this bet. Unfortunately, he was too impatient. Points. Points again. Chu Luiwei couldn't help but ask. It seems that points are really very important? Of course. Zhong Sun laughed. You just entered the academy, so it's normal that you don't understand these things. Although Elder Qiao, he has already explained it to you, there are many things that you have to experience slowly before you can truly understand. As he spoke, he sized up Chu Luiwei. Do you want the formula for a 9th grade pill? Chu Luiwei looked at his face and swallowed the words, not interested. She smiled slightly yes. In the academy, a 9th grade pill formula can be bought with 1,000 points. Of course, it's a low-grade one. If you want a middle grade or high-grade one, you have to add points. However, as long as you have enough points, there's nothing you can't buy here. As Zhong Sun spoke, his expression was somewhat agitated. Lingxiao College had been passed down for 10,000 years and had a deep foundation.
It was definitely not inferior to any first-rate family in the Divine Ruins world. Or even stronger, things that couldn't be found outside, things that couldn't be bought with money, things that were priceless, and things that people had never even heard of, were all available here. As long as you have enough points, you can exchange for it. This was enough to show how important points were. Chu Liyue blinked and nodded as if he had understood. If that's the case, then it's really important. Doesn't that mean my current 1,000 points are useless? It was only enough to buy a pill formula for a lower 9th grade pill. It was not enough to waste time and feelings. However, Zhong Sun did not see the faint disdain in her eyes. So, once you enter, you must work hard to earn points. But you don't have to worry. You've only just arrived today, and you've already gone from 100 to 1,000. You're already better than many people. Over time, your points will quickly accumulate. After he finished speaking, he noticed that the young man in front of him had his head lowered slightly. He didn't know what he was thinking. Chuyu? Chuyu? After shouting twice, the young man raised his head and smiled at him. His black eyes were shining brightly under the sunlight. Senior brother Zhong Sun is right. The handsome young man raised the corners of his lips and smiled gently and harmlessly. There should be other people gambling in the academy right now, right? I wonder if I can trouble senior brother Zhong's son to make a trip. I want to take a look. Digression. Happy Mid-Autumn Festival, everyone. I'll continue to update at 6 p.m. Yes, I'll add another update today. I recommend my friend Xiao Yao use The Detective's Wife is the best. Detective Sister vs. Sickly Medical Examiner. A bolt of lightning fell from the sky. Crack. It actually struck the famous underworld boss directly into the body of the criminal police captain, Su Qing. The identity changed, and the black and white positions changed. Thus, everyone opened their eyes. The variety of methods of solving cases and the endless style of investigating cases were unheard of and unseen. It was simply the flower of the police world. It was just that this flower only wanted to pick a police grass to taste. Chapter 11:17. The arrival of Chu Liyue and the others didn't cause any waves in Lingxiao College. New students would come in every few days, and everyone was already used to it. There were only 3 days left until the assessment at the beginning of the month. They were already too busy with their own matters. So how could they care about anything else? There were countless geniuses in the world, and here, strength was the most important thing. Feng Zhou. After Elder Wenxi left with the others, Elder Huafeng was the only one left to guard the place. Soon it was nighttime. Elder Huafeng packed up his things and returned to the courtyard. Sitting on a stone bench in the courtyard, the surroundings were silent. However, Elder Huafeng's mood was not calm. It's been so long. Why hasn't he come out yet? Staring at the twinkling stars in the sky, Elder Huafeng muttered softly. No, it was really wrong. He had clearly felt that person coming. That familiar aura. Even if he died, he would never mistake it. At first, when that person didn't appear, Elder Huafeng thought that the other party was deliberately playing around. But after waiting and being vigilant for a day, he didn't even see half a figure. Elder Huafeng stroked his beard and had a headache. It was like knowing that there was a landmine buried beside you, but you didn't know where it was and when it would suddenly explode. His heart was hanging in the air. This feeling was really not good. Elder Huafeng thought for a while before grabbing the wine pot at his waist and taking a long sip. It burned his throat. He wiped his mouth forcefully and snorted. If you don't want to come, then don't come. Who wants to wait for you? After saying that, he got up and went back to his room. He lifted the quilt and lay on the bed to rest. The moonlight shone in from the window. Voila! Elder Huafeng jumped up in annoyance. Ah, so annoying. When this old man finds you, let's see how I'll deal with you. Late at night. At night, Fangzhou City was no longer as lively as during the day. It fell into silence. A slightly stooped figure walked back and forth between the wide streets and narrow alleys. His footsteps seemed to be slow and silent, but they were very fast. Even if there were occasionally people passing by at night, they wouldn't notice. Strange, there's nothing here. There's nothing here. After searching for a long time,
Elder Hua Feng finally found a remote corner and stopped. He had a headache. Could it really be an illusion? After pondering for a long time, Elder Hua Feng finally gritted his teeth and headed towards the city gates. As usual, there was no one guarding the city gate at night. However, no one was allowed to enter or leave this place at night. Thus, at this moment, the city gate was also very quiet and empty. Elder Hua Feng walked to the door and held his breath. Gradually, his expression became resolute. That was definitely not an illusion. Then his gaze shifted and he looked at the gap on the city gate that had been cut open. It's been a few years since we last met, but your patience has improved by quite a bit. Elder Hua Feng snorted. Let's see how long you can last this time. Elder Hua Feng didn't sleep the entire night. The next morning, he sensed that someone was coming. It was the next elder in charge of receiving them, Guan Song. Elder Guan Song was shocked when he saw Elder Hua Feng's haggard expression. What's going on? I've only been guarding here for half a day. How did it become like this? Elder Hua Feng choked. He couldn't say that he was waiting for that little scourge. It's nothing. It's nothing. It's good that you're here. Elder Guan Song glanced at the empty wine pot on his waist and said with concern, Why don't you go back earlier? I think you no need. Elder Hua Feng refused straightforwardly. He had already changed his mind. He insisted on waiting here. Elder Hua Feng waited for 3 days. Several elders had changed in the middle, but Elder Hua Feng still stood his ground and didn't leave. However, no matter how he waited and searched, that person was still nowhere to be seen. Elder Hua Feng's heart was devastated. If you're back, you should have come out after hiding for a few days. If you don't come back, Elder Hua Feng's eyes lit up. Could it be that that little scourge really didn't come back? After thinking for a long time, Elder Hua Feng finally returned the day before the beginning of the month. I'm not waiting anymore. Taking in a disciple is more important. At this moment, on a certain mountain within Lingxiao College, in the middle of the open space, 2 young men were facing each other. The hundreds of people in the surroundings all gathered into a circle. Beside the 2 young men were 2 stone platforms. On top of each of them were their own black jade tokens. The atmosphere was tense. Obviously, this was another pill bet. But at this moment, the 2 young men had yet to start, and everyone's gaze was on a figure in the crowd. It was a young man in a green brocade robe. His features were delicate and clean. Chuyu, who do you bet on to win this round? Zhong Sun, who was standing beside him, asked. As soon as he said this, the scene became even quieter. Some people subconsciously held their breaths and stared at the youth who was being questioned. It was as if they were waiting for his answer. Under these blazing gazes, Chu Luiyue felt a headache coming on. Things seemed to be a little serious. In fact, it was very simple. 3 days ago, she asked Zhong Sun to take her to see if there were any other pill bets. She wanted to earn some pocket money for herself. In the end, after she won 5 consecutive rounds, things began to develop out of control. Many people heard that a junior brother had just joined the academy and won 5 consecutive rounds of pill bets. The key was that he chose all 5 rounds with high odds. Just when everyone thought that he would be defeated, he turned the tables and directly earned the points that countless people had painstakingly accumulated for a long time. This allowed this junior brother to earn 100 times the starting point on the first day of school. Once this news spread, it immediately caused quite a stir. Pill bets were very common in the academy. On one hand, everyone could learn from each other. On the other hand, it could also promote entertainment and adjust one's mood. Therefore, as long as someone started, there would be many people following. Most of them would win and lose. After all, there were too many aspects to pay attention to when it came to pill refinement. Even if one's level was higher, they could lose if they made a slight mistake in the competition. This kind of uncertainty also made pill bets more interesting. But now, a fledgling kid actually won 5 consecutive rounds. How could it not make people curious and shocked? Therefore, more and more people followed the trend. Today, wherever Chu Luiyue went, the bets would be very lively. Everyone was waiting for her to make a decision. Chu Luiyue rubbed the space between her eyebrows. Actually, it was really a coincidence, On the first day, she deliberately chose those competitions with high odds just to earn some quick money. Who knew that things would turn out like this? I think. Chu Liwa walked towards one of the stone platforms. Just as she placed her black jade token on it, she heard a loud voice coming from the sky. What are you guys doing? Tomorrow is the beginning of the month assessment. What are you all doing here? Everyone looked up. Chu Liwa also looked up. Which bastard organized this? Step forward. Everyone quickly put away their black jade tokens and looked at Chu Liwa in unison. Chu Liwa, who had just put down the black jade token, was confused. Chapter 11:18. You. Yes, it's you. Come here. As he spoke, the elder had already flown over from afar and landed on the ground. Everyone took a step back in unison and bowed respectfully. Greetings, Elder Wan Zheng. Elder Wan Zheng snorted coldly. I'll deal with you later. He looked at the culprit, Chu Liwa. You lad, eh? You. Elder Wan Zheng was stunned when he saw the unfamiliar face. You're new here? Chu Liwa's eyelids twitched. He took a step forward, cupped his fists, and bowed respectfully. Student Chu Yu greets Elder Wan Zheng. So you're Chu Yu. Elder Wan Zheng had heard of this name before. 2 days ago, he had heard Wincy mention that he had recruited a rare genius for them. He was only 16, but he was already an 8th grade celestial physician. Initially, Elder Wan Zheng thought that Chu Yu was busy familiarizing himself with the academy and his cultivation. After all, it was the start of the month examination. Who would have thought that he would be doing nothing here? Seeing that the lad before him was polite and young, Elder Wan Zheng's anger subsided a little. However, his tone was still impolite. Chu Yu, don't you know that pill gambling is prohibited on the last day of the month? Chu Liwa was dumbfounded. How did she know? No one told her at all. Zhong Sun quickly stepped forward to explain. Elder Wan Zheng, it's all my fault. Junior Chu Yu just arrived. I didn't make it clear to him, so he doesn't know. You don't know either? Elder Wan Zheng interrupted his words and looked around with a dignified expression. Everyone looked at each other and fell silent. Those present have violated the academy rules. 3,000 points will be deducted from each of you. Everyone wailed. They just wanted to earn some money. They hadn't even started yet. How could they be deducted so much? Elder Wan Zheng raised his eyebrows. Why? You want to double it? Everyone immediately fell silent. The two who made the pill gambling agreement will be deducted 5,000 points each. The 2 people standing beside the cauldron were furious, but they didn't dare to say anything. Who told them to do it knowingly? Originally, he was just hoping for a fluke and wanted to make some preparations before the beginning of the month. Who knew that his cleverness would backfire on him? Now, he could only accept the deduction of 5,000 yuan. And you? Elder Wan Zheng looked at Chu Liwa. Taking the lead in gambling, even though you didn't know anything about it, your points will still be deducted. Since this is your first offense, I'll deduct 5,000. Chu Liwa raised his eyebrows slightly. It wasn't easy for her to earn more than 20,000 yuan in the past 3 days, and now she had lost 5,000 yuan. It could be said that she had suffered a heavy loss. Elder Wan Zheng, little junior brother, is innocent in this matter. It's all our fault for not informing him in time and guiding him properly. You can deduct these 5,000 points from me, Zhong Sun hurriedly said. He also blamed himself in his heart. Actually, they didn't do it on purpose. Although the academy had set a rule that alchemy gambling was not allowed on the last day of the month, there was actually a limit to it. There cannot be more than 2 people. In other words, other than the 2 parties involved in the bet, as long as no one else joined in the bet, it would not be considered a violation. In the end, they gathered over 100 people all of a sudden. It would be strange if Elder Wan Zheng was not angry. Fortunately, the competition had not officially started, or the punishment would be even worse. He had been with little junior brother for the past 2 days and saw that he kept winning. In a moment of excitement, he forgot about this matter. In the end, he implicated everyone, especially little junior brother who had just arrived and didn't know anything. Senior brother Zhong Sun, thank you for your kind intentions, but since this matter was done by me, I should bear the responsibility. Chu Liwa shook his head and rejected Zhong Sun's help. Elder Wanzheng narrowed his eyes. That's more like it. As he said that, he waved his wrist and took out his green jade token. Whether it was the size or the appearance of the green jade token, it was slightly different from theirs. Obviously, this was something that only the elders would have. Now, line up one by one. At Elder Wanzheng's command, everyone could only go forward obediently. They lined up and placed their black jade tokens on the platform one by one. Rays of light flashed one after another. Many people showed a pained expression, but they didn't dare to say anything. Soon, even the two who hadn't had a chance to compete walked over and deducted 5,000 each. Zhong Sun glanced at Chu Luiyue hesitantly. Chu Luiyue took the initiative to step forward and place his black jade token in front of Elder Wanzheng. A white ray of light flashed across. The number on the token was reduced significantly. Chu Luiyue's attitude made Elder Wanzheng feel much better. That's more like it. You should learn more about the rules of the academy in the future, lest something like this happens again due to ignorance. Chu Luiyue replied obediently. Thank you for your reminder, Elder Wanzheng. I'll remember it. That's good. You're a good seedling, so don't waste your time on those messy matters. Be prepared today and perform well tomorrow. A rare smile finally appeared on Elder Wanzheng's face. Chu Luiyue nodded. Elder Wanzheng waved his hand. You can all disperse. As soon as he finished speaking, the crowd responded in unison and dispersed in a hubbub. Chu Luiyue, in the blink of an eye, only the three of them were left on the huge mountain. Elder Wanzheng gave a few more words of advice and left. Looking at the empty surroundings, Chu Luiyue was speechless, which was rare. Junior brother Chu Yu, don't take it to heart. Elder Wanzheng said those words for your own good. He didn't mean to blame you. Zhong Sun saw that there was something wrong with her expression and hurriedly consoled her. It's my fault too. Senior brother Zhong Sun, you don't have to blame yourself. Chu Luiyue shook her head. I know that it was Elder Wanzheng's good intentions. I just find it a little strange. What's strange? The overall atmosphere of Lingxiao College is very good, and everyone knows what they're doing. Why did they set such a rule? They couldn't gamble at the end of the month if they really didn't like it. They could have just banned it. Why did they have to set the last day? Oh, you're talking about this. Zhong Sun smiled knowingly. You're new here, so you don't know. At the beginning of every month, everyone will crazily consume points. Therefore, many people will crazily accumulate wealth on the first day, trying to get as many points as possible so that they can gain more advantages. You'll slowly find out the specifics in the future. The Academy set this rule on one hand to prevent people from maliciously competing and robbing others of their points. On the other hand, thinking of something, Zhong Sun's expression changed slightly, and his eyes darkened. Chu Luiyue looked at him. What's wrong with the other hand? Actually, I heard about this too. Zhong Sun hesitated for a moment before saying slowly, this rule has never been set in the Academy before. However, a few years ago, a student took advantage of the opportunity of pill gambling at the end of the month and pocketed 1/3 of the points of the students in the Academy, causing those people to be unable to cultivate normally for several months. Since then, the Academy specially added this rule. It was to prevent the same thing from happening again. Chu Luiyue blinked and asked with interest why. Who is that person? So powerful? Digression. Happy Mid-Autumn Festival. Chapter 1119. Zhong Sun shook his head. I've only been in the Academy for 2 years and have never seen that person. I heard that she only stayed in the Academy for about half a year before leaving. But to this day, there's still many rumors about that person in the Academy. He clicked his tongue. I heard that she's a rare all-rounder. All-rounder? Yes. Other than being a martial artist, a mystic cultivator, and a celestial physician, she's also good at refining. And her talent in all aspects is top-notch. I heard that when she first came to the Academy, there were no less than a dozen elders competing for the qualifications to become her master. In the end, the dean had no choice but to personally take her in as a disciple. That was the first disciple the dean had taken in 100 years. Chu Luiyue raised his eyebrows slightly. She was even good at refining.
She was indeed worthy of the title of all-rounder. What kind of genius had the elders of Lingxiao College not seen before? To be able to make them like this, it was enough to show how outstanding that person was. It's a pity that she suddenly disappeared half a year later and never returned. From then on, none of the elders in the academy mentioned that person's name again. It was as if she had never existed. Gradually, everyone stopped talking about it. Zhong Sun sighed. The reason why I've heard of this is because I once accidentally broke into her medicinal garden and was secretly warned by a senior martial sister. Only then did I know. Medicinal garden? Chu Luiwei was a little puzzled. Didn't they say that the medicinal herbs used by everyone in the academy were all obtained from the Medicine Wind Valley? Lingxiao College occupied an extremely large area with continuous mountain ranges. In this area of the Celestial Physician, there was a place specially used to grow medicinal herbs called the Medicine Wind Valley. Nourished by the essence of heaven and earth for 10,000 years, the Medicine Wind Valley became an excellent treasure ground for cultivating all kinds of precious herbs. Most of the medicinal herbs produced in the academy came from there. Oh, the dean specially dug out a piece of land from the Medicine Wind Valley for her and used it as her personal medicinal garden. When she refined medicine, she could only use the medicinal herbs grown in her own medicinal garden. Why is that? If she was an all-rounder, then she would need a lot of medicinal herbs and alchemy. Wouldn't that be cutting off her path to becoming a celestial physician? Even if they dug up the land, how slow would it be to nurture the herbs themselves? One had to know that many medicinal herbs required hundreds or even thousands of years to achieve sufficient medicinal effects. That's not the case. She can also use the medicinal herbs of the Medicine Wind Valley. She just needs to write a list in advance and wait for the elder in charge of guarding the Medicine Wind Valley to look over it. If you agree, she can use it. If you don't, then Chu Luiwei couldn't help but laugh. Why are there such strange rules? Zhong Sun paused, because she has only been in the academy for a month, and she has already used all of the best medicinal herbs in the Medicine Wind Valley. Chu Luiwei. I see. In that case, that person was truly a capable person. Chu Luiwei thought for a moment and smiled lazily. Even though he caused such a ruckus, the dean and the elders still couldn't beat him. Zhong Sun looked at him with a strange expression. The seniors are highly respected. How could they lay their hands on a young lady? Chu Luiwei. That's a woman. I didn't say it was a man, did I? Zhong Sun asked. Chu Luiwei smiled. When I heard that she was so powerful, I subconsciously thought that way. I heard that the dean and the elders really doted on her at that time, especially Elder Huafeng. He even taught her Xian formation step by step. But later on, for some reason, she disappeared inexplicably, and no one mentioned it anymore. Junior brother Chu Yu, I've said so much to you today. It's all for us to talk about it in private. You don't have to take it to heart. Like the others, senior brother Zhong Sun, don't worry. I know what to say and what to do. Chu Luiwei smiled. Zhong Sun heaved a sigh of relief. Chu Yu is a smart person. With a little guidance, he could understand it. Indeed, he didn't need to worry too much. That's good. You don't have to think too much about other things for the time being. You just have to make preparations to deal with the assessment at the beginning of the month tomorrow and successfully become a disciple. I've already told you about the situation of the elders. Do you know what to do now? Chu Luiwei nodded. Zhong Sun was relieved and smiled. Then I'll wait for junior brother Chu Yu to amaze the world tomorrow. After that, Chu Luiwei followed Zhong Sun back to his place of residence. Like the other peaks, there were some independent houses and courtyards here. Zhong Sun lived in one of them. Coincidentally, there was an empty courtyard not far from where he was staying, and Chu Luiwei was currently staying there. After bidding farewell to Zhong Sun, Chu Luiwei walked into the house. Tomorrow, I should be able to see the others in the academy. Chu Luiwei sat cross-legged, closed his eyes, and began to cultivate. On the other side, after Elder Wan Zheng settled the matters here, he returned to Qingming Square. On the clean square, the white jade stones reflected a faint light. One could vaguely see the flickering light on them. If it was a powerful Xian master, he would be able to see that the light had silently formed several complicated Xian formations that overlapped with each other.
Elder Wan Zheng walked to the front of the Dongwang Bell Tower. Below the Dongwang Bell Tower was a thick and sturdy base. There were a total of 4 doors. Each door faced the north, south, east, and west respectively. On the bronze door, there were lifelike carvings. Elder Wan Zheng walked to one of the doors, took out his green jade token, and placed it on top of the door. When the door opened, there was a large hall inside. He lifted his foot and entered. If it wasn't for the urgent situation this time, we wouldn't be in such a hurry to call you back. Elder Wan Zheng walked in and soon heard a familiar voice coming from the front. Everyone is now an important figure in the various sections. For you to take the time to come here, it's really, Elder, you're exaggerating. We're all students of the Academy. If the Academy is in trouble, we'll naturally do our best. A young man's voice sounded. But I wonder what's the matter that made all the elders so worried? You've been unwilling to tell us these few days. Now that everyone is here, you can finally tell us, right? Elder Wan Zheng walked in from the darkness. The hall was brightly lit. There were about 20 people here. A few of them were the elders of the Spirit Firmament Academy with the highest status. The remaining 10 or so people looked younger and had an extraordinary aura. They were the reinforcements that the Academy had sent a letter to invite. They were all students from first-rate families in the Academy. At this moment, everyone was sitting on 2 sides. The atmosphere was a little strange. Hearing the commotion, everyone turned around. Elder Wan Zheng's expression turned serious. I was dealing with something just now. I'm not late, right? Of course not. You're just in time. The young man who spoke just now smiled. The Saint of Yuntian Tower has just arrived. Everyone has been waiting for him, so we haven't said anything yet. Chapter 1120. The hall fell into a moment of silence. Many people quietly looked at Rong Xiao, who was sitting next to the elders, with different expressions. These words were obviously directed at him. However, unexpectedly, Rong Xiao did not seem to be angry. He smiled slightly, and his noble and enchanting face was instantly filled with vigor. It was as if one would forever sink into the depths of those unfathomable eyes. Recently, the clan has been busy with matters, and I really can't split myself. I hope the elders can forgive me. Elder Bo Yin, who was sitting at the head of the table, smiled. We have all heard about the Yuntian Tower. You have decided on a princess consort? Everyone's eyes fell on Rong Xiao. Yes. Rong Xiao's lips curled up slightly, and the angle of his smile deepened. Even the corners of his eyes seemed to have a hint of a smile. It's her first time at the Yuntian Tower, and there are many things she is not used to, so I stayed for a few more days. Everyone's expression was even more strange. Who in Hall did not know Rong Xiao's nature? Who had not seen his methods? This was a person who killed without batting an eyelid. Now he was suddenly so gentle and infatuated with a girl. It was simply unimaginable. It seems that Your Highness, the Holy Sun, really cares about this princess consort. You would rather put aside the crisis of the Academy than let her be sad and fearful. I couldn't tell that Your Highness, the Holy Sun, was actually such a devoted person. The one who spoke was still the man who had provoked him previously. Rong Xiao looked up slightly, and there seemed to be a whirlpool swirling in his black pupils. A cold and sharp light flashed past. That man suddenly froze. Even if I didn't come, the Academy still has the elders to hold the fort. Young Master Wei's words. Are you doubting the elders' abilities? Wei Shiping choked. He could not say this in front of everyone. What's more, she's Ai's princess consort. If I don't pamper her, do you think it's someone else's turn? Although Rong Xiao said this with a smile, his eyes were half squinted and the corners of his eyes seemed to be smiling, yet not smiling. There was a bit of frost in his eyes, which made people feel a chill in their hearts. There was fire in Wei Shiping's chest, and he was fuming. Just as he was about to retort, Elder Bo Yin had already spoken. All right, there was no need to discuss these things for the time being. The most important thing right now is still that matter. Elder Wan Zheng also walked over and sat on one of the last 2 empty chairs. All right, now that everyone is here, next, Elder Bo Yin, is the dean not coming today? A young woman beside him asked. In such an occasion, the dean should be in charge of the overall situation. Elder Boyan's expression did not change. The dean is still in seclusion. For the time being, I will still be in charge of everything in the academy. There was nothing wrong with this reason, but it still made some people frown slightly. This was because the dean had been in seclusion for a long time. Until now, the dean did not seem to have any intention of coming out of seclusion. It was hard not to be doubtful. But Elder Bo Yin did not give them a chance to continue this topic. This matter was briefly mentioned in the letter I sent to all of you previously, but as for the specifics, it is more appropriate to tell all of you personally. Hearing Elder Bo Yan's serious tone, everyone became even quieter, all of them listening attentively. In fact, the Academy did not only send them a message this time. There were at least 100 people who received the letter, but among them, only these were qualified to sit here. For example, Jiang Zhuan also received the letter, even earlier than Rong Xiao. But at this moment, she could only wait outside. At the same time, in the Mystic Master area of the Academy, in an exquisite courtyard on a mountain peak, a few women were sitting in a circle. Ziyuan, tomorrow is the beginning of the month assessment. I heard that you learned a new martial technique. Are you going to show it this time? A pretty woman asked curiously. Jiang Zhuan did not react, as if she did not hear her. Ziyuan? Ziyuan? After shouting twice, Jiang Zhuan came back to her senses and met their gazes. She reacted for a moment before she understood what had happened and nodded lightly. Yes, I do plan to. With that, her gaze landed on the Dongwang bell tower. Because her injuries had not fully recovered, her lips were still a little pale. Looking at her from afar made her look even more pitiful. Unfortunately, other than them, no one else could see it. The women beside her looked at each other. Actually, they did not need to ask to know why Jiang Zhuan was like this. During this period of time, the incident at the Yuntian Tower had already spread. In the world of divine ruins, although the various sects and clans did not have frequent interactions with each other, some important news still spread very quickly. Almost everyone in the academy knew about Jiang Jiwan's feelings for Rong Xiao. In fact, one of the main reasons why she came to Lingxiao College was because of this. The Immortal Water Mausoleum, where Jiang Jiwan was from, was one of the 28 tribes under the Yuntian Tower, and it was the strongest. Therefore, many people thought that she would be the woman standing next to Rong Xiao. But who knew that? Looking at Jiang Jiwan's dazed and absent-minded appearance, she probably would not listen to anything they said to her at this moment. Another woman with a sharp chin pursed her lips and suddenly said, Ziyuan, you're not like you at all now. If it were in the past, you would definitely be thinking about how to get a good result in the examination at the beginning of the month. Hearing this, Jiang Zhuan was stunned for a moment and then smiled bitterly. What's the use of fighting over these things now? He won't even look. In the past, she fought for these things only because Rong Xiao was too outstanding when he was in the academy. She thought that if she could be more powerful, then the gap between them would be smaller. As long as she could get close to him, it didn't matter what she did. But now, everything had lost its meaning. The princess consort was already decided. No matter what she thought or did, she could not change this fact. That's why you have to perform well. The woman with the sharp chin looked as if she expected better from Jiang Jiwan. She stretched out her index finger and lightly tapped Jiang Jiwan's forehead. You, after chasing him for so long, are you going to give up just like that? It's especially at times like this that you have to show your excellence. Let everyone, including him, realize how regretful it is that he didn't choose you. A glimmer of light flashed across Jiang Jiwan's eyes, but it disappeared in an instant. Outstanding. It seemed that they were still unaware of Shangguan Yu's performance at the Yuntian Tower. If they knew that that woman was indeed stronger than her, they probably wouldn't have said such things. Ziyuan, think about it. You're in the academy, and so is Rong Xiao. As long as you're willing, what's the point of that princess consort? Jiang Zhuan was slightly taken aback. What do you mean? Chapter 1121. Think about it. Your results in the academy are outstanding and dazzling. However, that princess consort doesn't even have the qualifications to become a disciple of the academy. The pavilion closest to the water enjoys the moonlight first. It just so happens that Rongxiu will be staying in the academy for a while. As long as you stay by his side for a long time, the scales in his heart will definitely be biased towards you. The sharp-chinned lady revealed a coquettish and smug expression. None of the men can resist such a gentle attack. That's right, Ziyuan, you've liked His Highness for so long. You're not willing to give up just like that, right? Actually, from our point of view, we've always thought that you're the one. Now that someone has snatched away your love, can you really bear it? The few ladies chimed in one after another, and soon, Jiang Juan was swayed. She pursed her lips tightly and frowned slightly. Her expression was conflicted and nervous. Actually, she originally wanted to say that Shangguan Yu was actually much more powerful than they had expected. For some reason, the Yuntian Tower didn't seem to have much news about Shanghai Yu. It was as if someone had deliberately blocked the news, so outsiders thought that Shanghai Yu was just an ordinary girl. However, Jiang Juan knew very well that, whether it was in terms of appearance, talent, or other aspects, Shanghai Yu was definitely not inferior to her. More importantly, Rongxiu doted on her. He did like that girl. He even did so much for her. However, Jiang Juan couldn't bring herself to say these words. She couldn't admit that that girl was more outstanding than her. After a long while, she finally exhaled. I have my own plans. In the room, Chu Liyue sat cross-legged and held her breath. After a while, she raised one hand. A dazzling light appeared on the tip of her finger. Very quickly, this one pearl transformed into several pearls, illuminating her entire palm. Jingshin finger transformed into Jingshin palm. Then, Chu Liyue slowly clenched her fist. Streams of origin power surged into his fist. It glowed faintly. Chi! Chu Liyue punched out. Whoosh! Astral winds rose abruptly. In the void, black cracks suddenly appeared. Those were the spatial cracks that had been torn apart by the tyrannical fist wind. At this moment, the surrounding heaven and earth energy seemed to be affected by this punch, producing subtle fluctuations. Buzz! Chu Liyue's pupil shrank. Just as the formless wave was about to rush out of the room, a majestic aura suddenly rushed out. Boom! The sound of a violent collision was heard. It was the power of this punch that hit the barrier that had just been set up. After a short but violent tremor, the barrier barely stabilized. Phew! Girl, you're scaring me to death. Taizu appeared in the room at some point. He patted his non-existent heart with a look of lingering fear. If word of this gets out, I think you'll be dealt with by those elders tonight. Chu Liyue coughed. I didn't expect it either. She slowly withdrew her power, then pulled back her fist and looked at it carefully. Her palm was fair and the knuckles were distinct. But if she hadn't seen it with her own eyes, no one would have known that this slender hand actually contained such astonishing power. The power of the Awakening God Fist is actually so strong. This was the first time she had used the Awakening God Fist. After breaking through to the 7th rank, the force in her body had greatly increased, and her control of the Awakening God Palm had reached the extreme. She thought that it was time to try to cultivate the Awakening God Fist. Anyway, this Awakening God art was one body. The Awakening God Fist was transformed from the previous Awakening God Finger and Awakening God Palm. So to Chu Liyue, it didn't consume too much energy. But she really didn't expect that the power of this Awakening God Fist would be so strong. That punch just now clearly showed signs of mobilizing the heaven and earth energy. This is an earth peak martial skill. What do you think? Taizu blew his beard and stared at her. But to be able to mobilize the heaven and earth energy, it's not a heaven rank martial skill. But the current you has a divine power in your body. Taizu shook his head. This Awakening God Fist is very profound, and its potential is huge. Just now you just casually attacked, and you already faintly touched the edge of the heaven rank martial skill. If you cultivate it well in the future, with your strength, you might really be able to unleash an even stronger power. Chu Luiwe was also secretly shocked, and then suddenly remembered the scene when she saw the Awakening God art. That's right, the Awakening God art also contained the power of the heavenly Tao. It was just that her level was too low and her strength was too weak, so she had never been able to understand it thoroughly. Later on, she encountered many things one after another, so she temporarily put this matter aside. Now that she thought about it, how could an ordinary Earth rank martial skill have such power? Girl, you should cultivate this martial skill well. In the future, it might become your trump card, Taizu said seriously. Chu Luiwe nodded. I'll help you guard. You should comprehend it well. After Taizu finished speaking, he strengthened the power of the barrier to prevent the movements from being detected by the people outside. Thank you, Taizu. Chu Luiwe thanked him and quickly restrained her thoughts. She closed her eyes and recalled the Awakening God art. Chu Luiwe had always felt that the Awakening God art in her mind was messy about the Awakening God fist. But now, unknowingly, Chu Luiwe actually vaguely felt a subtle pattern. She once again circulated the force in her body and raised her right hand. The red force suddenly surged out. It wrapped around her palm. Then, her palm began to slowly turn in the air and slowly clenched into a fist. When her hand formed a fist, her entire palm was already enveloped by a resplendent light, and vaguely, it seemed to have become somewhat transparent. A terrifying aura was emitted from it. Taizu, who was standing at the side, was secretly shocked when he saw this. This Awakening God art was indeed comparable to a heaven-rank martial skill. This girl's luck, isn't it too good? Chu Luiwe did not know what Taizu was thinking. She kept recalling the Awakening God Fist formula in her mind while constantly pouring the force into her hand. If she opened her eyes at this moment, she would see that as her force poured in, her palm also became more and more transparent. This would almost make people wonder if this hand would become completely transparent after she finished cultivating. As time passed, the force in Chu Luiwe's hand became stronger and stronger, and the vast pressure contained in it was also constantly increasing. Taizu's eyes were fixed on it. For some reason, he also inexplicably became nervous. The dazzling light shone on Chu Luiwe's face, making her originally fair and jade-like face look even clearer and cleaner. At a certain point, Chu Luiwe suddenly opened her eyes. Her long eyelashes trembled slightly, and her pitch-black eyes reflected a boundless light. She punched out. Crack! Taizu widened his eyes in shock. The barrier he had set up was easily broken by Chu Luiwe's punch. Chapter 1122. Chi-Chi. Taizu waved his sleeves, and two more forces flew out to stabilize the barrier. The shattered part of the barrier was quickly covered by a thin layer of glittering glass. Boom! The forces of both sides collided again. Bang! Well, the fist winds could not be stopped, and the door flew out. Looking at the empty door, Taizu's expression was very interesting. Junior brother Chu Yu. Junior brother Chu Yu? What's wrong with you? What happened? Zhong Sun's worried voice came from outside. Taizu's figure flashed and quickly disappeared, and he immediately withdrew the barrier. Chu Luiwe opened his eyes. The room was in a mess. But fortunately, Taizu's barrier helped her remove most of the power, so it did not cause any more serious consequences. Junior brother Chu Yu, you are... Zhong Sun, who came to the door, was shocked. Even though it was night, he could still barely see the scene in the room with the help of the bright moonlight. Senior brother Zhong Sun, don't worry. Chu Luiwe stood up and smiled. I was just studying a martial technique just now and didn't control it well, so martial technique? Zhong Sun's expression eased. He glanced at the door that was already dead, and the corner of his mouth twitched. Then you should have chosen a spacious place to practice. In the house, it was a moment of negligence this time. It won't happen again. Chu Luiwe smiled. That's good. Not to mention the other things in our academy. There are many places for cultivation. Why do you have to do it in the house? But, junior brother Chu Yu, you are a celestial physician. Why do you have to spend so much effort on cultivation? Before Chu Liyue could answer, his expression changed, revealing a look of understanding. You are a dual cultivator? Chu Liyue pondered for a moment. I am indeed cultivating as a martial artist. Zhong Sun did not notice the mystery of these words and said, I see. It seems that you are quite talented in this area. However, junior brother Chu Yu, since you have such top-notch talent in celestial physician, it is better to focus on this. Zhong Sun's words were rather direct. Even in Lingxiao College, celestial physician students were proud of themselves. Chu Liyue chuckled and nodded. Thank you for your advice, senior brother Zhong Sun. Zhong Sun took a few more glances and gave a few more instructions before leaving. Muttered Chu Liyue softly as she looked at the door that was dazzled beyond recognition. This door is too weak. I'll have to get a sturdier one tomorrow. It's not about the door. Taizu's voice suddenly sounded, as if he was suppressing something. Girl, why didn't you restrain yourself earlier? My old bones can't take it anymore. Chu Liyue. Taizu, when did you get a bone? That's not important. In any case, you must be more careful in the future. Oh, Chu Liyue made a sound of agreement. After a while, he asked again, what do you think? Are you really okay? Taizu snorted coldly. Ask me this question when you break through to the 9th rank. Chu Liyue laughed. Yes. It seemed that it was a false alarm. After receiving Taizu's affirmative answer, Chu Liyue was relieved. She did not continue to study the God-stunning fist. Instead, she began to devour the force, hoping to break through as soon as possible. However, she did not know that Taizu's mood had not calmed down for a long time. This girl was only at the early stage of the 7th rank, but she was already able to exert such strength from the peak of the Earth rank martial skill. It was simply too shocking. Was it because she was different from ordinary people, or was it because of that martial skill? That thing will appear at any time. This time, it will definitely attract countless people to chase after it crazily. If the item is left behind. Elder Bo Yin was saying something with a serious expression. The hall was silent, and everyone's expressions became more solemn. However, at this moment, Rongxiu suddenly turned around, frowned slightly, and looked in a certain direction. This movement, Elder Bo Yin paused. What's wrong, Rongxiu? Is there a problem? Rongxiu retracted his gaze, and the ripples in his eyes were completely hidden. Nothing. Please continue, Elder. He leaned on the chair and placed one hand on the armrest. His posture was as lazy and noble as ever. However, his eyes drooped slightly. No one saw the faint light that flashed across his eyes. With his personality, he really could not calm down. He actually came back to the academy by himself. He rubbed his temples with a slight headache and looked at Elder Wanzhong. After a moment, he leaned over slightly and asked in a low voice, Elder Wanzhong, were you delayed by something just now? Elder Wanzhong waved his hand. Sigh. It's a bunch of brats who broke the rules and bet on pills again. They said that there was a new kid in the academy who had good eyesight in this aspect and did not know the rules, so they gathered a group of people. However, they have already been punished. Rongxiu raised his eyebrows. This plot was really familiar. Why? Why are you asking this? Nothing. Rongxiu's thin lips curled up slightly and gave Elder Wanzhong a warm and polite smile. Elder Wanzhong felt that something was amiss. Why is this brat looking at me with a hint of sympathy? What does this mean? When he wanted to take a closer look, he saw that Rongxiu had already retracted his gaze and tilted his head slightly, as though he was seriously listening to Elder Bo Yan's words. Elder Wanzhong suppressed the strange feeling in his heart. It was not that the academy had never recruited troublemakers before, but most of them would be obedient after being lectured. Except for that time, Elder Wanzhong thought of something and trembled. He quickly suppressed his thoughts. The meeting in the Dongwang Bell Tower lasted until the 2nd day. However, everyone present was strong, and it was fine for them to stay up for a night occasionally. I'll have to trouble all of you for the rest. Elder Bo Yin stood up and said sincerely, Elder Bo Yin is too polite. We are students of the academy, and it's only right for us to do our best for the academy. Yes, It's our honor to be able to do what we can for the Academy. Everyone said. Elder Bo Yin nodded. Everyone left one after another. Rongxiu moved slowly, and unknowingly, he was at the back. Some people did not forget to look back as they left, but they did not say anything. They knew very well that the Academy elders treated Rongxiu differently from them. However, there was nothing they could do about it, as he was too strong. It would be strange if the elders did not trust him. After the crowd dispersed, only Rongxiu and a few elders were left in the surroundings. Rongxiu, why haven't I heard you mention your consort before? Elder Bo Yan's expression softened and became more amiable as he asked. I heard she's an outsider. As soon as he said those words, the other elders also turned to look at him. According to Rongxiu's current status, it was inappropriate for him to marry an outsider as his consort. Rongxiu smiled and nodded. Yes. Elder Bo Yan looked at his expression carefully, and his heart skipped a beat. Rongxiu should really like that girl. Another elder beside him shook his head and sighed. Rongxiu, you're too stubborn. Now that you're the holy son of the Yuntian Tower, how can you marry such a girl as your consort? Chapter 1123. Here it comes. Rongxiu had already expected this, so when he heard this, there was no displeasure on his face. Instead, he smiled slightly. It seems that the letter from the Mausoleum of Immortal Water has already been sent to Elder Danqing. Elder Danqing frowned. The Mausoleum of Immortal Water didn't say much to this old man. You were the one who did it, so it will naturally spread. Could it be that you still want to hide this matter? His tone couldn't be considered good. The people beside him fell silent for a moment. Although they more or less had the same thought in their hearts, they wouldn't be as straightforward as Elder Danqing, nor would they be as agitated as him. The reason why he was particularly concerned about this matter was because he was Jiang Jiwan's master. His beloved disciple had suffered such grievances and was sad and upset. As her master, he naturally felt unhappy. Even when he looked at Rongxiu, he felt a bit of an eyesore. The consort selection ceremony was held publicly. Rongxiu smiled faintly. Everything that happened was witnessed by everyone with their own eyes. Elder Danqing choked. If that's the case, Rongxiu's actions can't be considered as an intentional cover-up. If Elder Danqing has any questions about what happened that day, I can immediately answer them for you, lest you listen to some unreliable rumors and get angry for no reason. Rongxiu was still smiling. However, these seemingly polite words were as sharp as a knife. Elder Danqing's expression was even uglier. Are you saying that Ziyuan lied and deliberately slandered you? I didn't say that. Rongxiu raised his eyebrows slightly. It's just that the person involved is here. No matter how much outsiders say, it's not as convenient and accurate as me saying it to you personally, isn't it? Outsiders. It was a simple and casual word, but it instantly separated Jiang Ziyuan and drew a clear line between them. Elder Danqing's chest felt stifled. He didn't want to get involved in this matter, but after Jiang Ziyuan returned, she looked dejected and sad. He felt very distressed and couldn't help but question Rongxiu. But Rongxiu was right. Jiang Ziyuan was indeed an outsider to him. Not to mention that Jiang Ziyuan's status was not equal to his. Rongxiu had never shown any interest in Jiang Ziyuan. In the end, it was all Jiang Ziyuan's wishful thinking. All right, this is Rongxiu's own matter. He has always been a wise man of his own mind. Since he has made his decision, we shouldn't interfere. Elder said. Elder also nodded. That's Rongxiu. If you have time in the future, invite your princess consort to the academy. Rongxiu had spent quite some time in Lingxiao College. The dean and elders of the college were all seniors to him. It was normal for him to make such a request. Rongxiu paused for a rare moment, as if he was hesitating. Let's wait for a while. Now that the college is in trouble, bringing her here rashly might delay the elders' important matters. Also, she needs some time to get used to it. They didn't expect Rongxiu to reject him. The elders looked at each other in surprise. Who exactly is that girl for Rongxiu to be so protective of her? All right. Elder Bo Yin knew that this was Rong Xiu's concession, so he didn't say anything else. At this moment, a melodious bell sound came from outside. Buzz, it was the sound of the Dongwang bell. The assessment at the beginning of the month is about to begin. Elder Wan Zheng looked at Elder Bo Yin. According to tradition, Elder Bo Yin had to appear on such occasions. Elder Bo Yin nodded slightly. Let's go out. Rong Xiu, you leave first. I'll accompany the elders to take a look. Rong Xiu interrupted Elder Bo Yin and said with a smile. The elders were all astonished. Really? Rong Xiu had always been cold and didn't like crowds. Even when he was in the college, he didn't appear on such occasions often, let alone now. Yes. Rong Xiu's smile deepened. I suddenly remembered that I haven't seen such a scene for a long time, and I miss it. The elders won't object to it, right? Of course not. Huh. If those brats know that you're going to appear, I wonder how excited they'll be. Elder Wan Zheng laughed. Rong Xiu's excellence was well known in the college. Even though he had left the college, his reputation was still well known in the college. Many students secretly looked up to him as a role model, hoping that one day they could become as good as him, or even surpass him. Rong Xiu was silent for a moment, then smiled. Probably. Early in the morning, when the sun had just risen, Qingming Square was already bustling with noise and excitement. Countless students gathered here. Their young faces were full of vitality, and they all had different expressions. Excitement, agitation, nervousness, fighting spirit. They were either in groups of 3 or 5 or standing alone on the square. Their eyes were focused on the Eastern Emperor Bell Tower. So this is the test at the beginning of the month. I wonder if I can successfully become his disciple. I've been preparing for half a month. There shouldn't be any problems. My head hurts. I haven't understood the Xian formation that the teacher showed me last month. I'm afraid I'm in trouble this time. Haha, I just broke through 2 days ago. Hee hee. Who knows? My ranking might even rise today. Everyone was discussing. The gathering of all kinds of voices made the originally quiet square much livelier. Chu Luiwei and Zhong Sun stood in the celestial physician's area. However, their position was more remote, and they were connected to the Xian Master's area not far away. Standing here, they could still hear some of the Xian Master's low murmurs. Chu Luiwei followed everyone's gaze and looked at the Eastern Emperor Bell Tower. Why does everyone seem to be looking over there? Zhong Sun's expression could not hide his excitement, because the Azure Cloud leaderboard will appear on the Eastern Emperor Bell Tower soon. Chu Luiwei was stunned. Azure Cloud leaderboard. Digression. It's finally over today. Congratulations. What kind of mooncakes are everyone eating? Chapter 1124. She wasn't unfamiliar with this name. When she was sparring with Rong Xiu, she had unintentionally blurted out this name. But at that time, she didn't know what the Azure Cloud role was. So it was the Lingxiao College's role. You don't know? Looking at Chu Liuyue's expression, Zhong Sun thought that she had never heard of it. So he patiently explained. The Azure Cloud role is the overall role of Lingxiao College for 10,000 years. It records all the top geniuses that have appeared in the long history of the college. This role is divided into a total of 4 sub-roles. They are martial artist, mystic master, celestial physician, and weapon refiner. And they're also respectively listed on the walls of the East, South, West, and Northeast Bell Tower. As long as you are a student of the college and below the age of 30, you have the chance to rely on your own strength to ascend the Azure Cloud role. The day at the beginning of every month is a big day in the college. Some people take the test to become a disciple. Some seek treasures, but the most important thing is to ascend the role. As long as your name is on the Azure Cloud role, it will be much better. Even the dean and elders will think highly of you. Chu Luiwei understood. No wonder what? I was just thinking that no wonder everyone is so excited and attaches so much importance to the Azure Cloud role. Chu Luiwei crossed her arms, tapped her chin, and smiled as if she was in deep thought. It was no wonder that she didn't remember anything and could actually say those words when she was sparring with Rong Xiu. It seemed that surpassing Rongxiu's ranking on the Azure Cloud roll was also one of her obsessions in the past. Thinking of this, Chu Luiyue suddenly felt a little curious and looked at the grand and simple black wall of the East Emperor Bell Tower. The Azure Cloud roll. I wonder which roll Rongxiu is on and what is his ranking? Creak. A door of the East Emperor Bell Tower opened. Someone walked out from inside. This movement caused the noisy crowd to immediately quiet down. They all knew that the elders were about to come out. But very quickly, everyone discovered that in the group of people that walked out, other than the familiar elder, there were actually more than 10 young men and women. The Dongwang Bell Tower had always only been accessible to the most influential elders of the academy. The sudden appearance of such a group of people naturally raised suspicions. Soon, people recognized some of the people among them. Hey, isn't that the young master of the family way? Why is he here? Young master of family way? Which family way? Who else could it be? Naturally, it's the Qing Gupa family way. So it's him. It was rumored that this young master Wei was extremely talented and highly regarded by the family Wei. He was almost the most likely successor of the family Wei. However, didn't he finish his studies last year and leave the academy? Why are you here now? Look, the one beside her seemed to be the Meteor Sect's second miss. Sure, why is she here? Haven't you noticed that those are the disciples of first-rate aristocratic families who came from the academy? Someone whispered. Everyone looked, and it seemed to be true. Most of them had already left the academy. Only a few of them were still studying in the academy. When these people gathered together, the power behind them was enough to shake the entire Divine Ruins world. It was no wonder that the crowd had such a reaction. Suddenly, the crowd quieted down. The surrounding space seemed to have stagnated for a moment. Chu Luiyue felt the subtle change in the atmosphere and looked up. Because she was standing very far away and at the back, she couldn't see the appearance of the person who walked out clearly. However, when the tall and slender man in white walked out, Chu Luiyue recognized him almost instantly. The sky was clear and the sun was just right. The black Dongwang Bell Tower behind him emitted a faint, cold aura. The reliefs on the bronze door were lifelike and dignified, reflecting the white Qing Ming square. He was the third color that was the brightest and most eye-catching among the two extreme colors. He was dressed in white and looked like an immortal. However, his eyelids were slightly drooping. A faint shadow was cast on his jade-like face. From afar, he looked like a white jade immersed in the dark blue sea. Once he appeared, he easily took away everyone's line of sight. There were many handsome men and beautiful women among the people who walked out. However, compared to him, they instantly lost their flavor and became small and blurry. The crowd fell silent because of his appearance. Then, he seemed to feel something and looked up. Those eyes. Everyone who was touched by this gaze felt their minds tremble. They didn't know what kind of person could have such a pair of unfathomable eyes. They seemed to be able to swallow everything. However, in the blink of an eye, there seemed to be an additional layer of gentleness that could make people recklessly sink into it. Some women looked at him in a daze. Their faces had already turned red. However, he was only looking at one person at the end of his line of sight. Chu Luiyue and his eyes met. Rongxiu narrowed his eyes. Chu Luiyue's heart trembled slightly. Then, she inexplicably felt a little guilty and looked away. However, she regretted it the moment she looked away. What was she guilty about? It should be Rongxiu who was guilty. He must have known that she had come to Lingxiao College before, but he deliberately didn't mention it. He even deliberately avoided her when news came from Lingxiao College. In the end, he was the one who lacked confidence. However, when Chu Luiyue looked up again, she saw that there were a few more elders beside Rongxiu. They were whispering something to Rongxiu. Rongxiu was very tall. For the sake of convenience, he lowered his head slightly and seemed to be listening carefully. Then he nodded. His expression was indifferent and calm. The dozen or so young men and women who walked out earlier were standing at the edge of the crowd. In comparison, Rongxiu's position was very special. He was actually standing together with the elders. Moreover, it seemed that the elder's attitude towards Rongxiu was also very friendly and polite. At this moment, the crowd finally regained their senses and started whispering. God, who is that man? He's so handsome. If he's a student of the school, he should have some impression of him. He looks a little like a person. Could it be Yuntian Tower? Isn't that the holy son of Yuntian Tower, Rongxiu? I heard that he left the school a few years ago. I didn't expect to see him today. Rongxiu. It's the rumored Rongxiu, the crowd exclaimed. Elder Bo Yin had sharp ears and eyes. Naturally, he easily caught everyone's reaction. He couldn't help but shake his head and smile. As expected, once you arrive, this must be the scene. If not, I'll let you take over the assessment at the beginning of the month, Rongxiu said humbly. I don't dare to take over Elder Bo Yan's responsibility. Please. Elder Bo Yan laughed and took a step forward. I am Bo Yan. On behalf of Lingxiao College, I welcome everyone. Chapter 1125. His kind and dignified gaze quickly swept across the crowd. His low and deep voice was clearly transmitted to everyone's ears. Chu Luiyue only felt as if thunder had exploded beside her ears, and her blood also flowed along with it. It was enough to show how powerful he was. Her heart skipped a beat, and she couldn't help but be secretly shocked. Lingxiao College indeed lived up to its reputation. Elder Bo Yan's words made many people excited, especially those new students who had just entered the school within this 1 month. Being able to enter Lingxiao College and cultivate here was something that many people dreamed of. At this moment, standing here and listening to the elder of the school speak, how could they not be excited? Today's assessment, as usual, is divided into 2 parts. Elder Bo Yin placed one hand behind his back. The first part, new students' apprenticeship. The new students who entered the school last month, after this period of understanding, should have roughly found the teacher that they most like. As long as you can pass the corresponding assessment today, you can successfully enter the school. If you don't pass the assessment, you will be given another chance to choose another teacher. But if you still don't pass the second time, then you will have to leave the school immediately. You can only come again after 3 months. The crowd was silent. The nervousness in many people's eyes became more obvious. Lingxiao College is indeed strict, Chu Luiyue muttered softly. Even if you passed the first round of assessment by the elders in Fong State City, it didn't mean that you were officially a student of the school from now on. Within the school, there were even more stringent assessments waiting for them. One had to know that the previous assessment standards were already very high, and with this one, who knew how many people would be filtered out. Many geniuses who were revered and envied outside didn't even have the qualifications to enter here. But Lingxiao College had this kind of capital. What they wanted was the existence at the top of the line. Junior brother Chuyu, don't worry. With your talent and strength, you will definitely pass the assessment smoothly. Zhong Sun thought that she was worried about him, so he comforted her. Chu Luiyue smiled in response and didn't explain further. The second part is the assessment of the students and the change of the green cloud roll. This will depend on your own abilities. Chu Luiyue could clearly feel that when Elder Bo Yin mentioned the Azure Sky Proclamation, everyone's emotions had clearly become even more agitated. Good. Let's not talk about anything else. The monthly assessment begins. With Elder Bo Yan's command, all the elders went to their positions. Soon, the figures of several elders appeared in the center of the square. All freshmen stepped forward. Elder Wan Zheng shouted in a deep voice. After a moment of silence, a young man walked out. He had been standing in the crowd of mystic cultivators and was running towards a few mystic cultivator elders. With the first one, the rest of the freshmen also walked out one after another. Zhong Sun looked at Chu Luiyue. Just as he was about to pat her shoulder to encourage her, he suddenly felt a chill sweep over him. His movements stiffened, and he subconsciously looked in the direction of that cold aura, but he didn't see anything. It was as if that moment of fear was just an illusion. Chu Luiyue had already walked forward. Zhong Sun could only wave his hand from behind to cheer her on. Junior brother Chu Yu, do your best. Although this voice wasn't loud, it still attracted the attention of many people around. This was because the name Chu Yu was simply too popular in the academy these 2 days. For 3 consecutive days, he won all the pill gambling matches. One had to know that even many old foxes in the academy might not be able to achieve this level. In addition to yesterday's farce on the last day of the month, hundreds of people were implicated and had their points deducted. Even if Chu Luiwei didn't want to make it public, she had no choice. Look, that's Chu Yu. All sorts of voices came from the crowd. He's the one who's so daring to gather people for pill gambling? The corner of Chu Luiwei's eyes twitched slightly. I thought he would be a fierce man, but I didn't expect him to be a pretty boy. He looks rather delicate and pretty. If I didn't see it with my own eyes, no one would believe that this kid is so daring, right? Chu Luiwei, something doesn't seem right. I just want to earn some points easily. Why am I suddenly being accused of such a big crime? Get rid of me. If I knew that rule, I definitely wouldn't have broken it, okay? Hence, Chu Luiwei welcomed everyone's gazes, passed through the crowd, and walked to the front. This was an empty space that was specially set aside. Chu Luiwei took a deep breath and looked forward. Right in front of her was the Dongwang Bell Tower. Downstairs, there were a few elders and a few young people who looked like students. 4 men and 1 woman. Including Chu Luiwei, there were only 6 people on the celestial physician's side who needed to be assessed to become a disciple. After Chu Luiwei stood still, she looked at both sides. On the left was the Xian master, and there were about 20 new students. Chu Luiwei quickly saw Lin Qifei standing inside. After not seeing him for a while, his body seemed to have recovered. His originally pale face was now a little more lively and rosy. It was no longer as fragile as before, where it seemed like it would be destroyed with a casual touch. He was dressed in a green robe. Although his figure was slightly thin, his gentle and distant temperament made him appear very otherworldly. As if sensing something, Lin Qifei glanced over. Chu Luiwei retracted her gaze and looked to her right. There were no new students on this side. Oh, there aren't even any elders. Chu Luiwei raised her eyebrows slightly. This is really straightforward. When Elder Wensi brought them in, he had mentioned that there were very few blacksmiths in the academy. However, Chu Luiwei did not expect it to be so few. From where they were standing, they could not see the situation on the Xian master's side. However, they knew that there should be the most people there. Which one of you wants to go first? Elder Wan Zheng stood with his hands behind his back and slowly swept his gaze across them. He was actually not very fierce, but it was a pity that he was born with a dignified square face. When he was not smiling, it was easy for him to give off an extremely heavy pressure. Those who were not familiar with him would easily misunderstand that he had a bad temper. The few students standing in front of Chu Luiwei actually felt a little timid and nervous when they were questioned like this. For a moment, no one spoke. Elder Wanzheng was already used to this scene, so he didn't mind. His gaze turned, and it landed on Chu Luiwei. Kid, you go first. Most of the new students who had just entered the academy were filled with reverence and curiosity. It was easy for them to not be able to let go of everything. However, this Chuyu was different. He had only been here for a few days, but he had already caused a pile of trouble. With the previous incident as a foundation, his psychological tolerance should be much higher now. Everyone looked over. Chu Luiwei took a step forward. A pair of deep, intangible eyes landed on her shoulder. Such a small and thin piece of paper simply couldn't fit them all. Not long after she took a look at it, Chu Luiwei realized that the words on it had disappeared. Then, a few lines of words appeared on the clean paper. This was the content immediately before. For medicinal herbs alone, the words appeared a total of 4 times. The 5th time was the final treatment. After Chu Luiwei roughly read through it, the words disappeared again. This time, there were no other traces. This also meant that even if Chu Luiwei was fully focused from start to the end, she could only barely finish reading 1 prescription. It was extremely difficult for an ordinary person to finish reading it.
let alone distinguish the real from the fake. Chu Liwei took a deep breath and looked at the other one. The same thing happened again. Fortunately, Chu Liwei was prepared this time. She didn't look as nervous and uneasy as before. In fact, before the last line of words disappeared, she had already retracted her gaze and returned the 2 prescriptions. Many people sighed with regret. It seemed that Chu Yu couldn't make it. Well, how many people in the world could pass such a perverted test? You're not reading anymore? Have you given up? Elder Wan Zheng took the 2 pieces of paper with an as-expected expression. Anyway, he didn't expect anyone to. The first one I read was fake. The second one is real. Chu Liwei said calmly and seriously. What? Elder Wan Zheng didn't react immediately. His expression froze for a moment. Chu Liwei smiled slightly and explained in more detail. Although the blood cinnamon can refresh one's spirit and nourish one's qi, when placed together with the white bamboo fruit, the medicinal effect will be greatly neutralized. Moreover, there are 2 white bamboo fruits which add a bit of coldness. It's harmful. Also, plum blossom caltrop can't be put in together with a frozen stone. The smell of plum blossom caltrop will greatly affect the thickness of the ice layer on the frozen stone. If you're not careful, the frozen stone will be completely destroyed and lose its medicinal effect. Chu Yue's voice was very soft as she spoke tirelessly. The surroundings gradually quieted down. Elder Wan Zheng's eyes slowly widened. Do you still want to continue? Chu Liwei asked. After saying so much, anyone who knew a little about celestial physician should be able to understand, right? How can you tell? Elder Wan Zheng's voice was trembling a little. Chu Liwei chuckled lightly. Naturally, I saw it with my eyes. No, what I mean is, as Elder Wan Zheng spoke, he saw the sly smile of the young man opposite him. Elves are intelligent and outstanding. Elder Wan Zheng's heart beat faster. As a celestial physician, he knew too well how precious this young man's talent was. It wasn't that there weren't people who had a photographic memory, but there were very few people who could be like Chu Yu, who could clearly remember the medicinal ingredients, the dosage, and even the order in which they were refined. The most precious thing was that he was very clear about the characteristics of these pills and had mastered them through a comprehensive study. He had a thorough understanding of them. A thought popped up in Elder Wan Zheng's mind. He finally found a treasure again. There's no need. Elder Wan Zheng said repeatedly. His square face, which always looked serious, couldn't hide his excitement at this moment. There was a smile at the corner of his eyes. This is enough. You pass. If he didn't accept this, then he would really be punished by the heavens. Back then, he couldn't win against the dean. Now it was finally his turn. Chu Liwei blinked. Pass. That's it. Well, it seemed that Elder Wan Zheng's request wasn't that high after all. If the surrounding people knew what Chu Liwei was thinking, they would probably gang up on her. You may have it easy, but have you considered others? Do you know how hard we've been living? Okay. Chu Yu. From today onwards, you're my weight. Before Elder Wan Zheng could finish, he was suddenly interrupted. He was stunned. He turned around to look at the other celestial physician and felt a little uneasy. Then, he heard one of them say to Chu Liwei with a smile, Chu Yu, I wonder if you're interested in joining us? Elder Wan Zheng snorted. They were here to snatch him. Chapter 11:27. What are you guys doing here? Didn't you hear Chu Yu say that he wants to be my disciple? Isn't it too much to try and snatch him now? Elder Wan Zheng said bluntly. However, the elders didn't seem to care. This child is new here and doesn't know much about the academy. It's normal for him to make the wrong choice in such a rash situation. It's not too late to let the child take a good look at him before choosing a master. That's right, Wan Zheng. Who would be willing to follow you when you're always pulling a long face? They would be scared to death by you. Chu Yu is still young. How can he endure this kind of torture? Chu Yu, I think you should come to my side. I guarantee that you won't be worse than Wan Zheng. The few teachers decided to speak openly about it. Celestial physician geniuses were rare to begin with. How could they not be tempted when they met such an outstanding one? At this time, They had to put their pride aside for the time being. It was more important to snatch the talent. Chu Luiwei was speechless. The celestial physician elders weren't weak at all. This, the sudden change, and the strange style of the scene left the surrounding onlookers dumbfounded. Weren't the elders very arrogant? Weren't the masters all very cold and aloof? What was going on now? The new students who hadn't taken the test had different expressions when they saw the situation. Some were envious, some were jealous, and some were expressionless. Fourth brother, look, I told you that the kid would definitely do it. Luo Yinming looked at the situation from afar and couldn't help but laugh. However, his eyes were still filled with amazement and surprise. He knew that Chu Yu was outstanding, but he didn't expect him to pass Elder Wan Zheng's test. With such talent, as long as he cultivated well in the academy, his future would be limitless. Luo Yinlin nodded slightly. He looked at the young man in a different light. Actually, at the beginning, he did not take Chu Yu seriously. However, from the looks of it now, Chu Yu seemed to be much stronger than he had expected. At the very least, he hadn't seen the elders fighting over a student in public for a long time, especially when they were all proud celestial physician. I didn't expect such a dark horse to appear in this test. Elder Bo Yin, who was standing on the Dongwang Bell Tower, said in surprise. What a pleasant surprise. Although he didn't cultivate celestial physician, he could see that the young man named Chu Yu was extremely talented. At this moment, Elder Bo Yin saw Rong Xiu staring at the young man. Why? Does Rong Xiu have any opinions about that young man? Rong Xiu retracted his gaze, and his lips curved up. She is indeed outstanding. A light flashed across Elder Bo Yin's old and sharp eyes. It's to receive such a compliment. Rong Xiu had never been interested in such things, and he wouldn't even say a word about the people and things that he didn't care about. Moreover, he himself was a top genius. There were very few people who were qualified to be praised and acknowledged by him. Rong Xiu smiled. Someone who can make Elder Wan Zheng thirst for talent naturally has her abilities. That's true. Elder Bo Yin stroked his beard. Ever since that time, Elder Wan Zheng had failed to win against the dean. He had become much stricter than before. This was also why he hadn't taken in a disciple for such a long time. After seeing a true genius who was like a gift from the heavens, when he looked at others, he found them to be unbearably vulgar and unworthy of his attention. Elder Wan Zheng was stubborn. He wouldn't lower his standards. Today, he finally met someone he liked. Of course, he wouldn't give up. There seems to be a few good seedlings over at the martial artist side. They seem to have potential. But this time, Rong Xiu still had a faint smile on his face. He only grunted. He didn't even look at the martial artist side. He didn't want to bother with them. Elder Bo Yin was even more confused. He couldn't help but look at Chu Luiwei. This Rong Xiu's personality didn't change. He still didn't care about other things. What he cared about was, Elders, thank you for your favor. But Chu Yu was Elder Wan Zheng's disciple first, so, facing the aggressive attacks of the elders, Chu Luiwei didn't seem to panic. She smiled politely and rejected them one by one. From start to finish, her mind didn't seem to waver. Seeing her firm attitude, the elders were a little disappointed. But they gave up in the end. They had no choice. If you want to snatch someone, you have to see if the person is willing to be snatched. Elder Wan Zheng was delighted. He couldn't help but laugh out loud. Ha ha ha! You want to snatch someone from me? No way. It wasn't easy to get such a precious genius. Of course, he had to nurture her well. Thinking about how he punished Chu Luiwei yesterday, Elder Wan Zheng had mixed feelings. Fortunately, this child was magnanimous. She didn't take that matter to heart. Otherwise, he would have missed such a great opportunity. Kid, don't worry. In the future, with me around, I won't let anyone bully you, Elder Wan Zheng said solemnly. Chu Luiwei smiled. Then, thank you, Elder. Master. Elder Wan Zheng was overjoyed when he heard her call him master. Good, good, good. When we get back, we'll do the ceremony properly. Elder Wan Zheng was overjoyed. He was in high spirits. This made the atmosphere at the Celestial Physician's place more relaxed than before. But at the same time,
it gave rise to more subtle feelings. Because Chu Luiwe was the first to take the test. She was the first to take the test and performed so well. She even successfully became Elder Wan Zheng's disciple. Without a doubt, she put a lot of pressure on the rest of the people. Everyone was a celestial physician. They were especially sensitive in this aspect. They could see that Chu Luiwe was indeed very talented in this aspect. If it were them, it would be difficult for them to even memorize the contents of the 2 prescriptions. Not to mention that she could accurately determine the authenticity of the prescriptions and even point out the problems in them. For a moment, there were many people who were envious and jealous. After Chu Luiwe passed the test, she took a step back and stood aside, giving her position to the others. Next, an elder shouted. The rest of the people looked at each other. The girl was the first to step forward. I'll do it. Chu Luiwe glanced at the girl. She seemed to be in her 20s. Her skin was fair, her nose was straight, and her eyes were watery. However, there was a hint of arrogance in her eyes. It made her look cold and distant. She walked straight to Elder Wan Zheng. Elder Wan Zheng, I would also like to be your disciple. She turned her gaze slightly and looked at Chu Luiwe with a hint of provocation. Chu Luiwe chuckled. The students of Lingxiao College were really competitive. Chapter 1128. Elder Wan Zheng seemed to be used to this. He laughed and threw out 2 prescriptions. Good. This is the prescription for another type of pill. Take a look. The woman took it with both hands and glanced at it. Her expression changed quickly. She was standing at the back just now, so she didn't know that the words on the paper would appear alternately. When she saw how relaxed Chu Luiwe was, she thought, just as she was panicking, the words on the paper disappeared. Soon, new names of herbs appeared. The woman realized that she had underestimated the situation. Cold sweat started to appear on her forehead. Wu Xian is already a 9th grade celestial physician. She should be able to pass the test more easily than Chu Yu, right? She's only 21 this year. Her talent isn't much worse than Chu Yu's. Maybe Chu Yu won't be able to reach Wu Xian's level when he's 21. That's not necessarily true. If Elder Wan Zheng's test is so easy to pass, why hasn't anyone succeeded in the past 3 years? There's no lack of 9th grade celestial physician in there. In that case, how did Chu pass? Isn't he a little too smart? Whispers could be heard from the people behind him. Wu Xian became more and more nervous. She was very confident in herself and believed that she was the most outstanding one among these people. Therefore, when he saw everyone praising that Chu Yu endlessly, a bit of a competitive heart was born, and he wanted to win against him. But she didn't expect the test to be so difficult. The more she read, the more anxious and confused Wu Xian became. How did Chu Yu remember so many herbs at once? He even found a problem with them. Soon, the last line of words disappeared. Wu Xian hurriedly looked at the second sheet. However, her mind was in a mess. Even if she had 10% of her strength, she could only use 70 to 80%. The words on the second piece of paper overlapped and soon disappeared. Are you done reading? Elder Wan Zheng looked at the 2 sheets of white paper in her hand and asked. I'm done reading. Wu Xian's voice was weak, and her hands were trembling. Then, tell me, which one is real and which one is fake? Wu Xian was silent for a long time. It was only when Elder Wan Zheng urged him that he gritted his teeth and gave an answer. The first one is real. The second one is... No, the second one is real. Elder Wan Zheng didn't say anything and just stared at her. After a long while, Wu Xian finally gave in. She lowered her head, her cheeks flushed red. She opened her mouth and finally said, "Don't worry. This student does not know." There was a hint of unwillingness and shame in her words. It was her first time admitting her incompetence in front of so many people. However, Elder Wan Zheng had seen too many of these situations. He raised his hand and shot out a beam of origin power. The 2 pieces of paper silently turned to dust. You still have a second chance. Wu Xian was shocked. Only then did she remember that Elder Bo Yin had mentioned before that everyone only had 2 chances to be apprenticed. If the first time didn't work, there was always a second time. However, if he failed twice, he would be chased out and unable to officially become a student of the academy. She bit her lip and suddenly looked at Chu Luiwei. Elder Wanzheng, this student has something to ask. Was the prescription that Chu Yu looked at the same level as mine? If it wasn't lower level and simpler than hers, how could it be so easy? Chu Yu's prescription used a total of 198 types of herbs. Yours is 181. Elder Wanzheng glanced at her and smiled. Any other questions? Wu Xian's face turned red and white. No, no more. With that, she bit her lip and retreated to the side. There seemed to be tears in her eyes. She looked at Chu Luiwei with a complicated gaze. This young man, is he really so much stronger than me? However, Chu Luiwei didn't take her seriously, because at this moment, that familiar gaze was still on her. She resisted the urge to look up. Next, the celestial physician side was relatively quiet, but the Xian master and martial artist side was much more lively. Some succeeded, some failed. Some were happy, some were disappointed. However, this kind of situation happened every month, so the older students were already used to it. Chu Luiwei glanced out of the corner of his eye and happened to see that Lin Qifei seemed to have passed the assessment. His talent was stronger than what he had displayed, so it was naturally not a problem for him to get into Lingxiao College. After that, Luo Yinming also successfully passed. Chu Luiwei glanced at them and thought that Luo sure and Shang shouldn't have any problems. The new student assessment progressed very quickly. The celestial physician side was the first to finish. Including Chu Luiwei, a total of 4 of the 6 people passed the test. As for the remaining 2, they failed regretfully. The elimination rate for the Xian Master side was almost a quarter. Looking at the dejected young faces, Chu Luiwei's brows twitched slightly. Lingxiao College's threshold was indeed extremely high. However, this atmosphere of joy and sadness quickly dissipated. This was because, after the first part of the new student assessment ended, even more people were eagerly waiting for the Azure Cloud roll. Countless eyes looked at the Dongwang Bell Tower. Elder Bo Yin laughed out loud. Looks like you've all waited anxiously. Fine, I'll release the roll now. As he spoke, he waved his sleeve. The Dongwang Bell rang 3 times in a row. Dong, dong, dong. In the next moment, thousands of rays of light flew out, shining brilliantly. Countless rays of light converged on the iron-black wall, forming neatly arranged names. Chu Luiwei looked up. She was looking at the celestial physician roll. A familiar name suddenly appeared. Digression. I'm going out for a whole day today, so I'm very tired. Chapter 1129. Rong Xiao. Chu Luiwei was stunned when she saw the familiar name at the top of the list. Rong Xiao is actually on the celestial physician list, and he's so close to the top. How? How could he be number 1? Chu Luiwei muttered softly. Elder Wanzheng looked up and narrowed his eyes when he heard her voice. You mean Rong Xiao? He's not number 1. Chu Luiwei turned to look at him. Rong Xiao is number 2. There's another person above him. Another person? Chu Luiwei looked up again, but she didn't see another name above Rong Xiao. Number 1. Number 1's name has been erased. Elder Wanzheng's tone was a little strange. Why is that? Chu Luiwei couldn't figure it out. Since everyone wanted to be on the list, why would the number 1's name be erased? That's the dean's doing. After the number 1's name was placed on the list, it disappeared not long after. Many new students thought that Rong Xiao was number 1, but that wasn't the case. Elder Wanzheng lifted his chin. Look carefully. The number 1 position is engraved with the dean's seal. Chu Luiwei took a closer look. Indeed, there seemed to be a faint layer of pressure at the top. But why would the dean do that? Chu Luiwei wanted to say something, but stopped. A top figure like him should have his own considerations. She guessed that would be a waste of time to ask Elder Wanzheng. But this is something that happened a few years ago. Not many people in the academy talk about it now, so not many people know about it. Even if they knew that something was wrong with the list, the elders and students tacitly chose to keep quiet. Elder Wanzheng suddenly sighed softly. If he hadn't accepted Chu Luiwei as his disciple, he wouldn't have mentioned this matter. After all, some things were in the past. It's fine as long as you know about it. There's no need to dwell on it. Now, it's not wrong to say that Rong Xiao is the celestial physician on the Azure Cloud leaderboard. Chu Yu, you have to cultivate more in the future and strive to be on the list as soon as possible. Elder smiled and patted Chu Liuyue's shoulder. His usually solemn square face was surprisingly kind at this moment. He looked at Chu Luiwei with sparkling eyes, as if he had high expectations of her. A faint sense of uneasiness grew in her heart. Master, what do you mean? Elder Wanjing chuckled. Don't worry. I won't ask you to be on the list now. I'll give you 3 months. The rankings ranks. Looked at the last name. There was the last name first. There were only 100 names on the proclamation of Azure Clouds, and the last name seemed to be a man's name, Bien Wenhao. That Bien Wenhao, how strong is he now? Chu Luiwei asked in a low voice. He not strong. That kid is now at the peak of the 9th rank. As long as you reach the peak of the 9th rank, with your spiritual energy as a celestial physician, you'll definitely surpass him. Chu Luiwei was speechless. Elder Wanzheng, you seem to have misunderstood me. No matter how talented I am, isn't it a little too much for you to expect me to break through from the 8th rank to the 9th rank in 3 months? Besides, I just broke through to the 8th rank at the Heavenly Cave Cliff. Is there a problem? Elder Wanzheng looked at her lovingly. Do you want me to cheer you on? Chu Luiwei replied. I'll definitely do my best. That's my good disciple. Only then did Elder Wanzheng heave a sigh of relief. It was quite difficult to find another genius like that scourge. Otherwise, he wouldn't have failed to find one in the past few years. Now, he finally had Chu Yu. With more effort, he should also be a promising talent. Elder Wanzheng was comfortable, but Chu Luiwei was uncomfortable. She glanced at the Qingyun ranking again. The last 100th place was at the peak of the 9th rank. Then what about Rong Xiao? She no longer had any interest in finding that man and asking him about it. The gap was too big. Who else was there to ask? Looking at the unfamiliar names on the ranking, Chu Luiwei let out a long breath. She still had a lot to learn in Lingxiao College. Other than the Celestial Physician ranking, the other 3 rankings had also been hung up. The Mystic Masters and Martial Artists had gathered the most people, but the Blacksmiths were still quiet. Other than an elder standing there symbolically, there wasn't even anyone looking at the ranking. The older students were used to it, but the new students were busy with themselves, so it was very empty for a while. Chu Luiwei originally wanted to take a look at the 2 rankings, but unfortunately, it was too crowded and lively. She thought for a moment and walked over to the Blacksmiths. Unlike the Celestial Physician ranking, there was only a short section on the Blacksmiths ranking. This meant that there were less than 100 people on it. Chu Luiwei looked at the name at the top, and her pupils constricted. It was actually Rong Xiao too. Chu Luiwei's heart trembled. She paused and walked back a few steps. From where she was standing, she could see the 2 rankings. It was obvious that Rong Xiao's name on the Celestial Physician ranking was obviously 1 level lower than his name on the Blacksmith's ranking. Rong Xiao was the true number 1 on the Blacksmith's ranking. Chu Luiwei finally couldn't help but look at Rong Xiao, who was standing on the Dongwang Bell Tower. This man, he actually hid so much. It didn't take a genius to figure out exactly how formidable his strength was, since he was able to obtain such a ranking on the Ascension rankings. Rong Xiao looked down. Chu Luiwei narrowed her eyes and walked toward the ranking. The crowd was noisy. So this is the Qingyun ranking. Sigh, I finally made it last month, but I didn't make any breakthroughs this month. I'm afraid I'll be squeezed down again. I heard that those who have completely broken through to the divine level can only make it into the top 20. I really don't know what kind of monsters are those who are ranked in front. I heard that Senior Rong Xiao has been on the ranking for many years, and no one has broken through to this day. He's really amazing. Chu Yu's heart trembled slightly. As expected, Rong Xiao's name was still in the first place. However, there was a small blank space under his name. Thinking of what Elder Wanzheng said just now, she suddenly understood something. Some of the new students were still asking questions. The first place is Senior Rongxiu. Then what's the matter with the second place? That's right. Why is there a blank space out of nowhere? Shoo! Hearing this, the senior students hurriedly signaled for them to be quiet. The person who occupies the second place is a special student in the academy. His name is not to be mentioned. It's fine if you don't understand since you're new here, but don't talk about this in the future. Many of the new students were confused. Why is that? There's no reason. In short, from now on, you will abide by this rule. You came to the academy to improve your own cultivation. Other people's matters have nothing to do with you, understand? Thank you for your teachings, senior brother. Chu Liyue's heart skipped a beat, and she went to look at the Xian master ranking. Rongxiu's name was in second place. His name had been erased, just like the celestial physician ranking. Chapter 1130. A strange feeling arose in Chu Liyue's heart. There were a total of 4 rankings on the Azure Cloud Roll. Rongxiu occupied the first place on the Weapon Refiner and Martial Artist rankings. That mysterious student occupied the first place on the other 2 rankings, Celestial Physician and Mystic Master. To be able to stand up to Rongxiu, one didn't need to think to know that the person must be very formidable. But such a powerful student should be doted on by the dean and elders. Why would they deliberately erase that person's name? From the way Elder Bo Yin and the others treated Rongxiu, it could be seen that they should be especially tolerant and gentle towards students with outstanding talent and strength. But only this person, Chu Liyue, recalled what she heard from Zhong Sun. Could it be that the person whose name was erased was actually the dean's disciple? Chu Liyue sized up the Azure Cloud Roll and was slightly stunned. She almost forgot one thing. Her name didn't seem to be on the Azure Cloud Roll. Chu Liyue wasn't thinking of her current name, Chu Yu, but her previous name in Lingxiao College. Since she once wanted to surpass Rongxiu's name on the Azure Cloud Roll, then she should have the strength back then. At the very least, she should be on the Azure Cloud Roll, right? But no. Chu Liyue looked back and forth several times, but she didn't see her name. Then, maybe she didn't use her real name back then. Chu Liyue's gaze lingered on the blank space where the name was erased on the Azure Cloud Roll for a while. A bold and absurd thought surged in her mind, but she quickly suppressed it. Not to mention other things, just in the martial artist role alone, one must be a god-level powerhouse to enter the top 20. But she wasn't. She wasn't at her peak either. In that case, this conjecture seemed completely nonsensical. At this moment, a loud voice came from the crowd. Student Li Ziming challenges the 100th on the Azure Cloud Roll, Sun Xiao. Chu Liyue looked in the direction of the voice. The one who spoke was a well-built, dark-skinned young man. His face was filled with nervousness and apprehension, but he could not hide the excitement in his eyes. Being able to ascend the Ascension rankings was the greatest affirmation of a student's strength. There were a lot of people who had set this as their goal. They would constantly work hard and cultivate diligently, hoping that they would one day be able to make it onto the rankings. Of course, even those who were on the list did not dare to relax in the slightest, because they were at risk of being squeezed out at any time. Just like now, once someone was on the list, at the beginning of every month, someone would issue a challenge to them. After all, so long as there weren't any special circumstances, the people on the Ascension rankings couldn't refuse the challenge at the beginning of the month. Otherwise, it would be seen as admitting defeat. Of course, if a few people wanted to challenge the same person at the same time, then the strongest would be determined from these few people, and the strongest would fight the person on the Ascension rankings in the end. On the other hand, most of the people on the Ascension rankings wanted to move up a rank. Therefore, those with lower rankings would also challenge those with higher rankings. However, for the past few years, no one had attempted to challenge the top 3 on the warrior ranking. The few people ranked below these 3 people often swapped their rankings, and their strength was almost equal. But it was as if they had an agreement, and no one took the initiative to challenge those higher up. Not to mention Rongxiu, who was ranked first, or that mysterious person whose name had been erased from the second place. No one dared to challenge even the third place. Even the person ranked third was still in the academy until now. In short, the names at the top of the list were like mountains. Countless people wanted to climb and surpass them, but the truth was that even looking up at them was very difficult. Even those who had hopes of surpassing them didn't dare to casually make a move, let alone the others below. Li Ziming and Sun Zhao's challenge began very quickly. Subsequently, other people started to challenge one after another. Qingming Square was very large, and it was more than enough to accommodate all these people competing at the same time. In addition, there were elders at the side controlling the scene, so there was even less to worry. The challenge for Xian Masters also began very quickly. In comparison, the Celestial Physician side was much more deserted. On one hand, there were very few Celestial Physician. On the other hand, everyone had a rough understanding of each other's strength during pill gambling. If they weren't certain of winning, they basically wouldn't challenge. After a long while, only a dozen people from the Celestial Physician's side stood up to challenge. As for the Weapon Refinement Masters, there was even less to say. Chu Luwei didn't have any doubts. As long as they had a bit of talent in weapon refinement, they could be on the list. Chu Yu, come, observe and learn more. In another 2 or 3 months, it'll be your turn. Elder Wan Zheng called out. Chu Luwei walked back and stood at the side obediently. There were a total of 8 pill refining competitions going on at the same time in front of them. Chu Luwei even found a few of them familiar. She had indeed gotten to know many people during pill gambling on various mountains in the academy these few days. Kid, who do you think will win that round? Elder Wan Zheng raised his chin and asked softly. Chu Yue's eyes flickered slightly. Master, are you going to bet with me? Elder Wan Zheng was speechless. Is this kid crazy about earning points? However, when he saw the serious expression on the young man's face, Elder Wan Zheng realized that he wasn't joking. He seems to really want to earn points. You've just come to the academy. You'll have plenty of time to earn points in the future. Why are you in such a hurry? I'm just asking for your opinion. Before Elder Wan Zheng could finish his words, he saw the young man smiling slightly. Master, the academy only stipulates that we can't gamble at the end of the month. There's no rule about the beginning of the month, right? Elder Wan Zheng's eyelids twitched. I heard that every time it's this time, there will be some people who will start betting. To be honest, there are already a few people who came to ask for my opinion today. Chu Luwei looked troubled. Tell me, should I say it or not? I'll give you the points later. Elder Wan Zheng couldn't help but shout. Why didn't I notice that this kid knows how to play such a trick? He looks obedient and sensible, but now it seems that he's different from what I expected. Chu Luwei then smiled in satisfaction. Her eyes curved into crescents, and her starry eyes sparkled. I knew Master is the best. However, this smile made Elder Wan Zheng's eyelids twitch violently. Yu, why do I feel like I've been cheated? And this feeling is strangely familiar. However, before he could think about it carefully, Chu Luwei had already turned her head to look at the arena. She crossed her arms and gently rubbed her chin with one hand, as if she was deep in thought. I think this round should be. Under the sunlight, the young man's delicate face looked innocent and harmless. When he was thinking seriously, he was exceptionally quiet, and there was a special aura around him. Elder Wan Zheng thought to himself that he was overthinking. At this moment, the sound of something breaking through the air suddenly came from the sky. Rongxiao, do you dare to fight? Chapter 1131. His voice was like a sudden clap of thunder. It was earth-shattering. Everyone looked up in shock when they heard that. Someone wanted to challenge Rongxiao. When they saw who it was, the elders all revealed a look of understanding. It was him. Then it wasn't strange anymore. Some of the older students recognized him and exclaimed, Inshuli, he's out of seclusion. Many of them came back to their senses. Inshuli? The one who ranked third on the warrior leaderboard. That's him. He hasn't come out for a long time. I heard that he's been cultivating in seclusion. I didn't expect him to appear today. What's so strange about that? Didn't you hear that he's here to challenge Rongxiao? I'm afraid there's going to be a good show. Shuli stood in the air with a silver spear in his hand. On the silver spear, there were several blue lines intertwined and gathered at the tip, forming a sharp blue spearhead. From afar, it looked like a silver-blue dragon with a heavy aura. He was dressed in black, and his figure was tall and straight. His face was angular and his skin was wheat-colored. His pair of long and narrow eyes were as sharp as blades. If one looked into his eyes, his gaze seemed to be able to pierce through one's heart and look into the depths of one's heart. At that moment, his gaze was fixed on Rongxiu, who was standing on the Dongwang bell tower. Although he was expressionless, there was an undisguised fighting spirit in the depths of his eyes. Everyone could feel that he was eager to fight with Rongxiu. The aura on his body seemed to be sharper than the silver spear. Some people were born to fight. Shuli was obviously such a person. Everything that was present was not important to him. At that moment, there was only one thought in his mind: defeat Rongxiu. Countless pairs of eyes looked at Rongxiu. Curiosity, surprise, anticipation, nervousness. Obviously, everyone wanted to see Rongxiu's reaction. Besides that, they wanted to witness exactly how strong Rongxiu, who was ranked at the top of the Ascension rankings, was. One had to know that Rongxiu had not been in the academy for many years. Now that he had suddenly appeared, everyone naturally wanted to see for themselves if he was as powerful as the rumors said. However, Elder Bo Yin was the first to speak. Shuli, Rongxiu came back this time because he has something else to deal with. It's not. I accept your challenge. Before Elder Bo Yin could finish his words, he was interrupted by Rongxiu. On his noble and enchanting face, there was a carefree expression, and the corners of his eyes and brows seemed to hold a faint smile, as if he didn't take this matter to heart. Elder Bo Yin hesitated for a moment. Rongxiu, aren't you busy? It won't take long, Rongxiu said with a faint smile. How arrogant! Such a thought flashed through everyone's minds. Wasn't he implying that he didn't need much time and energy to deal with Shuli? He didn't take Shuli seriously at all. However, even if Shuli's ranking was lower than his on the Ascension rankings, he was still ranked third. Excluding the name that had mysteriously disappeared in the middle, the two of them were actually only one place apart. Moreover, Shuli had been diligently cultivating in the academy for the past few years. It was rumored that his strength was almost comparable to some of the elders. However, he usually didn't come out and kept a low profile, so no one was very familiar with him. However, Rongxiu actually said that in public. Wasn't he too arrogant? However, there was no anger on Shuli's face. Instead, the battle intent in his eyes burned brighter. All right, then let's see who's stronger. Swoosh! With a flick of his wrist, the silver spear drew a beautiful arc in the air and pointed directly at Rongxiu. Please! Chu Luwe watched the scene from below. In fact, she was also very curious about how powerful Rongxiu was. The two of them had sparred many times before, but she could clearly feel that Rongxiu had suppressed his strength to a level that was only slightly higher than hers. This way, she thought that she had a chance of winning every time, but unfortunately, she was always a little short. It was easy to imagine how terrifying a person who could control his own strength so perfectly was. At this moment, Rongxiu's figure flashed and appeared in front of Shuli. The two of them faced each other from a distance. For some reason, the huge Qingming square suddenly fell silent. The atmosphere instantly became tense. It's been a long time since I've seen Rongxiu fight. The people standing on the Dongwang bell tower also looked over. A young lady looked at the scene in the air in a daze and muttered softly. The last time I saw him fight, it was with she suddenly stopped talking as she thought of something. Rongxiu rarely sparred with others. Those who tried to challenge him basically gave up after sparring with him once and never sparred with him again. Only this Shuli didn't give up. From this perspective, his courage is commendable. A young man at the side laughed. Counting carefully, this is already the 5th time Shuli has challenged him, right? Rongxiu found it strange that he actually agreed to it. In their opinion, Rong Xiao didn't have the patience and thought to agree to multiple challenges from the same person. Haha. Other than the first time, didn't Rong Xiao intentionally agree to his challenge and fight him 3 times in a row because Shuli beat up that person? As soon as he finished speaking, the surroundings suddenly fell silent. The surrounding people looked at the young man, who spoke with a strange expression. Only then did the young man realize that he had said something wrong. He sucked in a breath of cold air and quickly covered his mouth. At the same time, he looked at Elder Bo Yin and the others with a panicked expression. Perhaps it was because they were still a distance away, or perhaps the elders weren't paying attention, but they didn't seem to have any reaction. Phew! The young man let out a long sigh, but there was still a lingering fear in his heart. He actually forgot about this taboo. You can't say that. Wei Shiping suddenly said coldly and broke the dead silence. I heard that Rong Xiao has been very busy these few years. Even the time he spent in the Yuntian Tower was very short. I don't know what he did, but I don't think he's focused on cultivation. On the other hand, Shuli has been diligently cultivating. There might be a gap between the two of them before, but now, it's still unknown who's stronger. Digression. After running around outside for a whole day yesterday, he was completely crippled. Update continues at 6 p.m. Chapter 1132. Rong Xiao's talent was strong. A few years ago in the academy, he had always been stronger than them. However, if he neglected his cultivation, it would be impossible for him to regain his past glory after a few years, right? Other things aside, Shuli was a lunatic when it came to fighting. With his current strength, he might really win against Rong Xiao. When the others heard this, they all had different expressions. They didn't say anything more and looked at the 2 people in the sky who were facing each other in the distance. Shuli looked at Rong Xiao's empty hands and frowned. His originally expressionless face seemed even sharper. Where's your yuan instrument? Rong Xiao shook his head. I don't need those. Shuli's expression turned cold. Looks like you're very confident in yourself. Rong Xiao, I've been cultivating hard for the past 3 years just for this day. Today I'll get my all. I'll defeat you. A few years ago, after losing to Rong Xiao several times, Shuli developed a strong fighting spirit against Rong Xiao. He had been waiting for an opportunity to turn the tables. However, Rong Xiao left the academy not long after that and did not come back for the past 3 years. This caused him to not have a chance to fight Rong Xiao officially. This time, after knowing that Rong Xiao had returned, he immediately rushed over. Rong Xiao smiled faintly. Please. Shuli narrowed his eyes, and the aura around him surged. A god-level expert. Exclamations came from the crowd. Judging by this aura, he must have broken through the demigod level and become a supreme god. Once a supreme god becomes a supreme god. But he's only 25 years old now, right? As expected of the martial artist ranked 3rd on the Green Cloud leaderboard. I wonder how powerful Rong Xiao is now. I heard that when he left the academy 3 years ago, he was already a supreme god. Now, the discussion from below entered Shuli's ears and made him even more eager to fight. Whoosh! With a wave of his arm, the silver spear in his hand suddenly pierced forward. Obsidian lightning spear. Chi! When he poured his origin power into the silver spear, the dark blue lines on the spear's body seemed to come alive and began to dance wildly. A terrifying pressure spread out in all directions with him as the center. The sound of thunder rang out. Shuli's figure flashed, and he had already charged in front of Rong Xiao in a blink of an eye. A spear thrust forward. No one could even see how he moved. Teleport. Chu Luiwen narrowed his eyes. Above rank 9 warriors were demigods, and above demigods were high gods. Only when a cultivator broke through to the high god level would they be considered a true god-level expert. Only when a cultivator reached this level would they be able to teleport without any external help. The distance of teleportation was different depending on the strength of each person. In a real battle, this move was very crucial. However, Rongxiu did not seem to be worried about this situation. In fact, when Shuli appeared 3 steps away from him, his expression was still as calm as before. It was as if he had expected this. Chu Yuyue's heart suddenly skipped a beat. At this moment, Rongxiu finally moved. He raised his right hand, reached forward, and grabbed the tip of the spear. Ah! Cries of surprise could be heard from the crowd. Many of the ladies looked nervous. Wei Shiping sneered. Pretentious fool. Shuli's obsidian lightning spear was a true high-grade, divine weapon. Rongxiu's futile attempt to block it with his physical body was simply a pipe dream. People who were too arrogant would always pay the price for their arrogance. However, at this moment, Shuli's expression suddenly changed. This was because he realized that the invincible obsidian lightning spear was easily blocked by Rongxiu and could not move forward. Even the sharp tip of the spear did not hurt Rongxiu. Both sides were in a stalemate. Shuli's expression turned serious as he poured more force into the obsidian lightning spear. However, it still did not move an inch. At this moment, the crowd below finally realized that something was wrong. Logically speaking, Rongxiu's hand should have been pierced through, but now, Shuli suddenly thought of something and widened his eyes as he looked at Rongxiu in disbelief. You've already cultivated to the level of a god. Crack. Before he could finish his sentence, Rongxiu's hand suddenly clenched. The faint blue light flickered, but it did not seem to affect Rongxiu at all. He decisively pulled and whipped out. Just like that, the obsidian lightning spear was released from Shuli's control. Swoosh! Before the crowd could see it clearly, they could only hear the sharp sound of wind breaking. The next moment, the scene in the sky shocked them. The obsidian lightning spear had somehow fallen into Rongxiu's hands. The terrifyingly sharp tip of the spear was pointed at Shuli's chest. It was as if he could pierce Shuli's heart if he moved an inch closer. The entire place was silent. Everyone was stunned as they watched the scene unfold before them. They did not know how to react. Rongxiu had taken Shuli's yuan instrument and turned the tables to attack, forcing Shuli to a dead end. He only used one move. The crowd did not even know if this was considered one move. They did not even see Rongxiu unleash his force. All they saw was a blur, and the two of them were completely reversed. Rongxiu lifted his chin slightly, his face still wearing the same casual smile. However, at this moment, there was an inexplicable pressure in the crowd's eyes. Do you want me to continue? Rongxiu's thin lips moved slightly as he said calmly. Shuli's body tensed up. He could even feel that the cold and sharp tip of the spear had already pierced through his clothes and was firmly pressed against his chest. A sharp pain came from above. He did not need to look down and know that his chest was bleeding. If it went deeper, he would be dead on the spot. Looking at those unfathomable eyes, Shuli did not doubt that Rongxiu was capable of doing such a thing. He pursed his lips, his face pale. After a while, he let out a long sigh. I admit defeat. Whoosh! The crowd below was in an uproar. He admitted defeat. Shuli admitted defeat just like that. According to his combative nature, it was extremely difficult for him to admit defeat so easily. At the same time, it also meant that he was helpless against Rongxiu's counterattack. His yuan instrument had been taken away, and it was pressed against his chest. Anyone would have to admit defeat, right? Everything happened too quickly. Everyone was looking forward to an exciting fight, but Rongxiu did not give them such a chance. The crowd standing on the Dongwang Bell Tower was also shocked. Rongxiu has actually become so strong. Wei Shiping, didn't you just say that Shuli could defeat Rongxiu? What do you think now? The surrounding people looked at Wei Shiping at the same time. Chapter 1133. Wei Shiping was shocked at first, but when he came back to his senses, his expression darkened. He gritted his teeth and said nothing, but the aura around him turned cold. He clenched his fists under his sleeves. Rongxiu. He did not waste his time in the past few years. Instead, he grew stronger. How'd he do it? Wei Shiping was not the only one who was curious about this. Inshuli wanted to know more. His eyes were fixed on Rong Xiao as he enunciated each word clearly. You've already not yet. Rong Xiao seemed to have expected him to say something. He smirked and tossed the obsidian lightning spear back. But it's enough to deal with you. Inshuli grabbed the spear and looked at Rong Xiao with a frown. His emotions were complicated. He suspected that Rong Xiao had already cultivated a divine body. But if Rong Xiao said he did not, then it should be true. But judging from the situation just now, it seemed like that was the case. There was no doubt that the gap between the two of them had widened again. Inshuli thought that he could close the gap between him and Rong Xiao with his hard work over the past few years. He might even surpass him, but he did not expect that Rong Xiao would improve even faster than him. He gripped the obsidian lightning spear tightly and looked down. There was already a smear of blood on his chest. If Rong Xiao wanted to, he could take Inshuli's life right away. Inshuli took a deep breath. When he looked up at Rong Xiao again, the shock and defeat in his eyes had disappeared. I admit that I'm not as strong as you today. I admit defeat, but one day I'll beat you. Rong Xiao raised an eyebrow. Inshuli would say this every time he lost. He was already used to it, but he would not give Inshuli the chance to do so. The battle between the two in the sky had ended, but the spectators were still in a daze. That's it. From the beginning to the end, the two of them had only exchanged one move. The entire process was so simple and straightforward that it made one's hair stand on end. But the more it was like this, the more it proved Rong Xiao's strength. No one doubted that Inshuli was not strong enough. Among the top 3 on the warrior roll, he was the only one who had stayed in the academy for the past few years. Even so, no one dared to challenge him. How could it be so easy to defeat a 25-year-old high god? In the eyes of many students, Inshuli was the synonym of a genius and an expert. It was within sight, but out of reach. However, such a person could not even withstand one move from Rong Xiao. Rong Xiao's strength was unimaginable. Senior brother Rong Xiao is indeed powerful. He actually agreed to senior brother Inshuli's request so easily. There have long been rumors that he is the top genius of the academy over the years. It is not an exaggeration to say that he is a legendary existence. At first, I thought it was an exaggeration. Who knew? After seeing it with my own eyes, I realized that it was all true. It is a pity that senior brother Rong Xiao has not been in the academy for the past few years. It is difficult to even meet him. This time, he should not be staying for too long. For such a man, I wonder what kind of woman would be able to enter his eyes. Do you still need to ask? Of course, it is Jiang Ji1. The immortal water mausoleum, where she is from, is the strongest tribe under the Yuntian Tower. Moreover, the two of them have known each other for a long time. They could be considered childhood sweethearts. Don't you know? Not long ago, senior brother Rong Xiao just got married to a princess. What? I heard that the princess is an outsider. Anyway, Jiang Juan has nothing to do with it. Many of the girls were discussing in low voices. There are also some who were quietly searching for Jiang Jiwan's figure. Those gazes landed on Jiang Juan, making her feel uneasy. She did not know how much effort she had to expend to resist the urge to turn around and run away. When she came to the academy, Rong Xiao had coincidentally left the academy. The two of them did not spend time together at the academy. But in reality, other than the freshmen who had just arrived, more than half of Lingxiao College's students knew that she liked Rong Xiao. Among them, there were some who added fuel to the fire. Of course, she also did it on purpose. Jiang Juan was beautiful and had outstanding talent. Naturally, she was like the moon surrounded by stars in the academy. Many of her seniors and juniors had a good impression of her and had even pursued her passionately. But they were all rejected by Jiang Juan. At first, no one knew why she did so. But later on, there was news that although she was born in the immortal water mausoleum, she was favored by the Yuntian Tower's tribe leader. Therefore, she grew up there. It was not an exaggeration to say that she was the spoiled eldest daughter of the Yuntian Tower. Because of this, Everyone naturally associated her with Rongxiu. Some people came to her in private to ask about it. Jiang Zhuan did not admit it, but she did not deny it either. Thus, gradually, everyone knew about this matter. Many people silently agreed that Jiang Zhuan and Rongxiu would be together. But who would have thought that in the end, another woman would suddenly appear and become Rongxiu's princess consort? Now, there were those who sympathized with Jiang Zhuan, those who mocked her, and those who wanted to see her make a fool of herself. How could Jiang Zhuan not know that? So at this moment, those eyes and comments made her feel even more uncomfortable. She wanted to leave, but she could not bear to. So, she could only stand there and suffer. Chu Luiyue also heard such comments. He raised his eyebrows slightly, feeling a little strange. Rongxiu could be considered a celebrity in Lingxiao College. Chuyu? Chuyu. A familiar voice suddenly sounded. Chu Luiyue turned his head and was surprised to see who it was. Miss Luo, why are you here? She should be with the martial artists. Why did she come to the celestial physician's side? You are here to see me? Chu Luiyue asked tentatively. Luo Shishir's cheeks were slightly red, and her eyes were bright as she looked at Chu Luiyue. Yes, I'm here to congratulate you. Congratulations on becoming Elder Wan Zheng's disciple. I heard that Elder Wan Zheng has high standards. You're the only one who has succeeded in the past few years. So, what's really about this? Chu Luiyue smiled. Thank you. Congratulations to you too. Your master seems to be Elder Wensi, right? Yes. Luo Shishir nodded, obviously very happy. Elder Wensi was one of the top elders in the academy, and he had a good personality. Luo Shishir felt very lucky to be able to become his student. Brother Sheng is the same as me, following Elder Wensi. As for fifth brother, he followed Elder Huafeng. Originally, he wanted to follow seventh madam like fourth brother. However, seventh madam has already recruited quite a number of students, so fifth brother still chose Elder Huafeng. Actually, the strength of these two elders was not much different. As long as one cultivated diligently, there would not be much difference. Chu Luiyue smiled. That's great. Congratulations to you guys too. The young man's smile was gentle, and his eyes were delicate and pretty. This smile seemed to make everything around him lose its color. Luo Shishir was momentarily absent-minded, and then, for some reason, her face turned slightly red. We said we were going to celebrate tonight. Are you coming? When Rongxiu looked down, he saw this scene. The handsome youth and the pretty girl stood opposite each other. The girl's face was slightly red, and her eyes were bright with shyness and joy. As for the youth, he lowered his eyes slightly, as if he was thinking about something. Then, he raised his eyes and smiled brightly at the girl. Rongxiu's brows moved slightly, and he smiled faintly, but his eyes were covered with a thin layer of frost. He had just arrived, and he already had an appointment with a girl. Chapter 1134. Sure, Chu Luiyue said with a smile. As a newcomer, she was not familiar with many people in the academy. It was probably because they had all entered on the same day and had passed the assessment at the beginning of the month. They had officially become Lingxiao College's students, so it was rare for them to be close to each other. Even though Zhuo Sheng wasn't very polite to her at the start, Chu Luiyue realized that he didn't have any bad intentions after they got familiar with each other. He was just a little hot-tempered and a little careless. In fact, these people's characters were not bad. In addition, Chu Luiyue already knew that they were from Mingxia Ci's Luo family, a real first-class family. Even compared to Yintian Tower, it was not inferior. It was quite rare to come from such a big family and not have an arrogant temperament. Chu Luiyue wanted to make friends with them, so she agreed to Luo Shishir's invitation. Hearing Chu Luiyue's affirmative answer, Luo Shishir was very happy. Then let's meet at Thousand Wine Mountain tonight. Thousand Wine Mountain was a mountain peak in Lingxiao College. It was at the intersection of the Celestial Physician and the Weapon Refiner School in the northwest. It was called this because there was a very magical spring on Thousand Wine Mountain. The water that gushed out of the spring naturally had the fragrance of wine. When drunk, It tasted very similar to wine, but it was not intoxicating. Therefore, the students in the academy liked to go there. It could be considered a popular place for students to relax in the academy. Chu Luiyue naturally nodded in agreement. Okay. After receiving Chu Luiyue's affirmative answer, Luo Shishir secretly sighed in relief and felt a little happy at the same time. She did not know why, but when Chu was 3 years younger than her, she always felt inexplicably nervous when standing in front of him. He seemed to have an innate, noble aura that made people not dare to slight him. Sensing the substantial gaze from the sky, Chu Luiyue raised her eyebrows slightly and looked up. Sensing her gaze, Luo Shishir also looked over. Senior Rong Xiao is very powerful. She praised from the bottom of her heart. It would be great if I could have the chance to fight him once. Chu Luiyue glanced back at her with a smile on his face. Why? Do you like Rong Xiao too? This also was naturally in comparison to the infatuated women around him. Luo Shishir quickly shook her head in denial. How could this be? I just feel that he's very powerful. After all, he's an existence that can continuously dominate the rankings for several years. All the students in the academy should want to reach the same height as him, right? With Yin Shuli as an example, Luo Shishir didn't even dare to say that she could surpass Rong Xiao. As it turned out, it was difficult for them to even catch up to him. And then, senior brother Rong Xiao already has a consort. Perhaps it was because of the inexplicable nervousness in her heart. Luo Shishir didn't notice that when the young man in front of her mentioned Rong Xiao, he didn't say the word senior brother. His tone and attitude were also very calm and natural. It was completely different from the way the other students in the academy treated Rong Xiao with respect, envy, or jealousy. That's true. Chu Luiyue nodded thoughtfully. At the very least, she really wanted to fight with him now. Chu Luiyue and Luo Shishir stood together and talked. From above, it looked like the two of them were chatting happily together. Rong Xiao. Elder Bo Yin shouted twice before Rong Xiao came back to his senses. What are you looking at? Rong Xiao calmly retracted his gaze and smiled faintly. Nothing. With that, he flew back to the Dongwang Bell Tower. Yin Shuli said, "We'll fight another day." Then, he quickly turned and left. No one stopped him. No one would be able to stay after being defeated so badly in front of everyone. Moreover, Yin Shuli had been waiting for this battle for a long time. Without a doubt, this was a huge blow to him. However, Yin Shuli had a good point. The more he was defeated, the braver he became. If others lost, it was inevitable that they would be sad and frustrated. If it happened too many times, or if the situation was more serious, they might not be able to recover. However, Yin Shuli would never have such a problem. This defeat only served to ignite his fighting spirit even more. From his point of view, his belligerent personality was also beneficial. The match started abruptly and ended in an even more unexpected manner. Before the crowd could react, it was already over. Many people were still unsatisfied. "Sai, what a pity. I thought I would be able to watch an exciting battle." I didn't expect. He defeated his opponent with one move, and it was against Yin Shuli. In the entire academy, I'm afraid only senior brother Rong Xiao can do this, right? I wanted to take the opportunity to observe, but now it looks like I won't be able to. If only I came to the academy a few years earlier, I might have been able to watch more of senior brother Rong Xiao's battles. You're thinking too much. Who in Lingxiao Academy doesn't know that senior brother Rong Xiao never fights a second round with anyone? Hearing the discussions below, the people standing on the Dongwang Bell Tower secretly exchanged looks of tacit understanding and smiled. To most people, Rong Xiao indeed did not have the patience to fight a second round with someone he had defeated. However, Yin Shuli was not the only exception. There was only one person who made Rong Xiao make an exception from the beginning to the end. The two of them would have a friendly spar every few days, and no one knew how many times they had fought. In the beginning, that person always lost. However, Rong Xiao seemed to have infinite patience and tolerance for the other party and almost gave in to all of his requests. However, that was a long time ago, Not long after that person left the academy, or rather disappeared, Rongxiu returned to the Yuntian Tower and rarely came to the academy. Naturally, he did not have the chance to see the various scenes from the past. Why? Do you have a junior brother or junior sister that you like? Elder Bo Yin asked jokingly. Rongxiu pondered for a moment, then nodded seriously. There's one, and it's not bad. Oh, Elder Bo Yin originally came to tease, but when he heard Rongxiu's words, he could not help but be surprised. He looked down. Which one is it? Rongxiu smiled. You already know, so why ask? Elder Bo Yin widened his eyes slightly. It's really Chuyu? Rongxiu raised his eyebrows slightly and nodded. Is quite good at celestial physician. That's true. After Elder Bo Yin recovered from a shock, he quickly accepted Rongxiu's words. That child is indeed not bad. Otherwise, he would not have caught Elder Wan Zheng's eye. Although he could not be compared to that person back then, there were some similarities. Elder Bo Yin looked carefully at the young man standing below, stroking his beard and saying seriously, "This young man is a genius. If he is properly groomed in the future, he will definitely have a bright future." Chapter 1135. Bo Yin, you think so too? Just then, Elder Wincy appeared out of nowhere and chuckled as he reminded them proudly. That child. I recruited him. When I saw him a few days ago, I felt that his talent was amazing and he was obedient. He would definitely do well in the future. What do you think? My eyes are good, right? Sigh, the only pity is that this child went to cultivate celestial physician. If he was a martial artist, TSK, Elder Wincy was happy and regretful at the same time. He was happy that such an outstanding new student was recruited by him. It was a pity that this child could not cultivate with him. Elder Wan Zheng, that old bastard, had taken advantage of him for nothing. Wan Zheng owes me a big favor this time, Elder Wincy said confidently. Rongxiu looked at him with a strange expression. It was not certain who owed who. Didn't you also take in a few students? One of them seems to be a direct descendant of Mingsha Xi's Luo family. Elder Bo Yin smiled. Isn't that enough? Elder Wincy coughed. Isn't this the more the better? The more the better. Rongxiu looked down again before slowly bidding farewell to everyone. Elder Bo Yin, I still need to go back and prepare for the matter we talked about earlier, so I won't stay any longer. The elders were not surprised that Rongxiu wanted to leave. It was already rare that he was willing to show up. Moreover, he had just fought with Yin Shuli. All right, I'll send someone. Thank you for your kindness, Elder Bo Yin, but there's no need for that for now. Rongxiu smiled. Although I haven't returned for a few years, this student is still very familiar with the academy. It was rare for Elder Bo Yin to hear him refer to himself like this. He felt rather emotional and nodded. All right then, I'll leave it to you. Rongxiu left quickly. Seeing his figure disappear, many people were disappointed. However, they also knew that Rongxiu was no longer in the academy. It was already very difficult to meet him, so they didn't dare to ask for more. Wei Shiping and the others also left not long after he left. Only the elders were left on the Dongwang Bell Tower. Meanwhile, the competition on the Qingming Square was still in full swing. As the competition progressed, the rankings on the Ascension rankings gradually changed as well. Those who successfully made it onto the list naturally cheered, while those who unfortunately failed were disappointed. The competition for the rankings was even more intense. Everyone was a genius from all over the world. Except for a few monstrous existences, most people's talents were actually about the same. Under such circumstances, the competition between the strong and the weak would be very intense. At this moment, Chu Liwei finally found out that the higher one's ranking was on the Ascension rankings, the longer one stayed on the rankings, and the more points one possessed. As for those who dominated the rankings, there was no need to even mention them. She thought about how she had painstakingly earned more than 20,000 points, and in the blink of an eye, 5,000 points were deducted. Chu Liwei was very heartbroken. The fastest way to earn points was to actually get onto the Ascension rankings. However, Even if she was the celestial physician that she was most confident in, the 100th place was still at the peak of the 9th grade. If she wanted to defeat him, she had to at least be able to refine a pill of the same grade. Chu Luiyue was a little troubled. Chu Yu, what are you thinking about? Luo Shishir asked. Chu Luiyue gently rubbed her chin with one hand. I'm thinking how to get onto the ascension rankings. Luo Shishir couldn't help but laugh out loud. You're already thinking about this problem? Isn't it, a little early? I'm thinking that it's better to be a little stronger and have a little more confidence to succeed in one go. What do you think? These words were already rather tactful. As if she didn't want to dampen Chu Liyue's enthusiasm, she added another sentence. According to your talent, it shouldn't take long, right? Chu Liyue's eyes flickered as she smiled. You're right. This kind of thing can't be rushed. Since it was so difficult to get onto the Celestial Physician ranking, the competition for the other two rankings would only be even more intense. Among these rankings, only the Weapon Refiner ranking with less than 100 people would have the least competition. Right. Weapon Refiner. Chu Liyue's eyes suddenly lit up as she looked towards the north. If she could display her talent as a weapon refiner, then she might be able to get onto the rankings directly. Thinking about it carefully, she had actually forged yuan tools before. Back then, the Cloud Sky copper sword that Chang Wanzhou used was sharpened by her. Although it wasn't considered a complete weapon refiner, but maybe she could really give it a try? Thinking of this, Chu Liyue walked towards the direction of the weapon refiner. Hearing Chu Liyue's footsteps, Elder Ren, who was standing under the weapon refiner ranking drowsily, opened one of his eyes. Oh, it's still that freshman who was casually strolling around. I think he's the one who became Wan Zheng's disciple. Then Elder Ren saw the young man walking straight towards him and standing in front of him. Greetings, Elder. Elder Ren opened his second eye and said lazily, What are you doing? If an ordinary person saw him for the first time, they would definitely think that he was arrogant and rude. But in fact, those who were familiar with Elder Ren, or rather, those who were familiar with the temperament of the weapon refiners, would know that this was already a very polite situation. And it was still because of Elder Wanzhong. Chu Liyue didn't mind. She bowed respectfully and asked, I want to get onto the weapon refiner ranking. Elder Ren reacted for a moment before standing up straight. He sized up Chu Liyue from head to toe and suddenly laughed. I couldn't tell, but you have a treasure on you. It was rare to see an origin tool that could avoid his detection and completely conceal the aura on its body. Kid, what rank are you now? Chu Liyue paused and said honestly, I'm at the early stage of the 7th rank. She should be able to break through to the middle stage of the 7th rank soon. But she didn't say that. What? Early stage of the 7th rank. Elder Ren widened his eyes in surprise, then slapped his thigh and laughed out loud. Ha ha, you brat. You're really a newborn calf who isn't afraid of tigers. Do you know that to get onto the weapon refiner ranking, you have to at least be a demigod? You're still far from being a rank 7 warrior. Elder Ren's laughter immediately attracted the attention of many people. After hearing his words, everyone's eyes turned to Chu Liyue. What else did they not understand? This brat who just entered the school wanted to get onto the weapon refiner ranking with his strength as a rank 7 warrior? It was simply a fantasy. He didn't even know the minimum requirements to be on the ranking. Wasn't he too naive? Kid, it's a good thing to get onto the Azure Cloud ranking. However, you have to see if you have the ability to do so. You should go back and wash up before sleeping. Chapter 1136. As Elder Ren spoke, he was about to close his eyes again. Elder, this student has something to ask of you. Chu Liyue was a little surprised by his words, but she didn't give up immediately. After pondering for a moment, she still spoke. She wasn't a demigod, but she had a strand of divine power in her body. More importantly, she had already forged the Cloud Sky copper sword a long time ago. Although the Tianlei at that time was attracted by the Taizu, but she was indeed the one who cleaned up the Tianlei later on Elder Ren opened his eyes and looked at her lazily. Speak. If a person's strength hasn't reached the demigod level, then is there really no way to determine if he has talent in refining? Why are you so obsessed with this? Elder Ren laughed and looked at her as if he was looking at an ignorant child who was throwing a tantrum. He pointed to the side. If you really want to be on the Qinyan leaderboard, go back and study alchemy properly. Perhaps you can get there faster. You should give up on being a refiner. Elder Ren didn't feel that it was useful to say so much to a young man who had just reached the 7th rank. In his opinion, Chu Luiyue was acting like this because of novelty. But in reality, how could it be so easy to be a refiner? Many cultivators who had reached the demigod level couldn't even touch the edge of being a refiner, let alone a child like this. Chu Luiyue paused. I heard that refiners use the power of Tianlei to forge yuan tools. If this student can do it, can I also be considered a refiner? Of course, what? Elder Ren choked and looked at Chu Luiyue with a bewildered expression. What did you just say? You can trigger Tianlei to forge yuan tools. Chu Luiyue blinked and nodded slightly. Impossible. This is impossible. Unless Elder Ren suddenly paused. You have contracted a divine beast? To Elder Ren, there was only one possibility to be able to trigger Tianlei without reaching the demigod level. It meant that a cultivator had contracted a divine beast. When a human formed a contract with a divine beast, a wisp of heavenly energy that originally belonged to the divine beast would enter the cultivator's body. Relying on this, it was not impossible to trigger the heavenly lightning. Chu Luiyue's eyes flashed as he nodded. Yes. Seeing that Chu Luiyue was so insistent, Elder Ren had no other choice but to mutter, if that's the case, I can give it a try. However, if you get hurt later, this old man won't be responsible. Chu Luiyue chuckled. Thank you, Elder. Chu, what are you doing? Luo Shir walked over, her eyes filled with confusion. You want to enter the weapon refiner ranking? Why did he come to the blacksmith ranking instead of the celestial physician ranking? Chu Luiyue nodded with an indifferent expression. Luo Shir wanted to persuade him, but for some reason, when she saw the young man's calm appearance, the words stuck in her throat suddenly couldn't leave her mouth. She hesitated for a moment and stood aside. At this time, most people's attention was still on the other 3 rankings. Although some people noticed the situation here, they didn't take it to heart. How many years had it been since the Armament Master Leaderboard had any movement, and a new student who had just joined the academy? Could he really create any waves? Elder Ren took out a fist-sized green jade stone. This is the Illusion God Pearl. There are several Tianlei stored in it. As long as you can summon it, you will succeed. The Armament Master's examination was relatively simple, because it was quite troublesome to take the blacksmith assessment on the spot. Therefore, most of the time, the elders would use this Illusion God Pearl to test the student's talent and potential. If one could trigger the Tianlei stored in it, it proved that one could become a blacksmith. According to the number of Tianlei summoned, the talent represented is different. Elder Ren handed over the Illusion God Pearl. As long as you can summon 1 Tianlei, you will succeed. Girl, do you need my help? Taizu's voice rang out. Thank you, Taizu, but I'll do this assessment myself. Chu Luiyue said in her heart. On one hand, if Taizu made a move, they might be detected on the spot. On the other hand, she really wanted to see if she could do it. She took the Illusion God Pearl with both hands. The Illusion God Pearl was green, lustrous, translucent, and cold to the touch. Chu Luiyue stared at the Illusion God Pearl in her hand, took a deep breath, and focused. There were a total of 4 special powers in her body. 2 of the Heavenly Path's powers entered her body when she contracted with the 2 divine beasts. The other was gathered from Taizu's Tianling God Realm. The last divine power was taken from the power left behind by Taizu in the northern underworld. The so-called divine power and the Heavenly Path's power came from the same source. Every divine beast was blessed by the Heavenly Path and was born between heaven and earth. They were inextricably linked to the Heavenly Path. The power in their bodies naturally contained a portion of the Heavenly Path's mysteries. In other words, They were born with the heavenly path's power. But it was different for humans. All cultivators would only have a chance to touch the heavenly path after they had completely broken through to the God level and converted all their origin power into divine power. Only the top experts who had truly touched the heavenly path would have divine power that contained the heavenly path's might. Only at this level would humans have a chance to reach the same level as divine beasts. This was also why divine beasts were born proud and noble. Compared to all living things in the world, divine beasts were the most favored existence by the heavens. The divine power that Chu Luiwe took contained a trace of the heavenly path's aura. Although it was weak, perhaps because Taizu in the northern underworld was already a god-level expert when he left this power behind, it was more or less comparable to the heavenly path's power left behind by a demigod like Taizu. So, in summary, Chu Luiwe had 4 types of heavenly path's power in her body. If she wanted to trigger Tianlei, this should be enough. However, for safety's sake, Chu Luiwe still chose to use the heavenly path's power that she had obtained through the contract with Dumpling. A vigorous aura spread out from Chu Luiwe's dantian, and then surged toward her hands. Buzz. The illusion god Pearl seemed to have sensed something and let out a soft sound. At the same time, ripples appeared on its surface. The ripples gradually spread inwards. There seemed to be something surging inside the translucent green jade. Seeing this, Elder Ran, who was originally dismissive of Chu Luiwe, straightened his back subconsciously, and the laziness in his eyes disappeared. Soon, a faint blue Tianlei flashed. Crack! Although this was a miniature version, because it was the real Tianlei, its might was still not to be underestimated. Elder Ran's face lit up. You're really... However, before he could finish his sentence, the Tianlei that had just been summoned seemed to have encountered something terrifying, and with a whoosh, it ran back and quickly disappeared. Chu Luiwe was confused. You're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.